This is Patriots Playbook.
Is it my turn to talk now?
Here's your host of Patriots Playbook, John Rook. Bad ass.
Delicious.
Where did you find that?
And everything archived.
I kind of like that one. Bad ass. All right, we're welcome into the Playbook. It is, there's something going on here today. There's people coming in and out and up and down the hallways and, talking about football and something known as the NFL draft. Is that tomorrow?
It's a big weekend
finally
for the
here,
stadium. Right? I know that, we're a football program, but the other football has a pretty big guy coming to town on Saturday night. Yeah, I was just going to say,
there's some dude named Messi.
Yeah, he might be in town this week, I've heard. So, pretty big week at Gillette Stadium.
Here's the big kicker. Place is sold out, right, for his game against Miami and
Lionel
Messi, and he won't play because it's artificial turf.
So he's been playing, he's not hurt. He's been playing their other games, and I know he's played some games because we actually have tickets too for the game because Jess played soccer in college, but big soccer fan also. So we're going to the game. We're supposed to be, but if we get that notey that Messi's not in the starting lineup, you're
gonna have 65,000 screaming memes out there.
Yeah, we're gonna be like, never mind.
I'm not gonna
be able to catch the radio broadcast on 102.5.
There
country.
we go. Love that.
with yours truly, the Marine at the controls, right?
You're welcome, Revs. We just gave you some
free pub.
Yeah.
Right. Clearly, this is an important day in this calendar year for the New England Patriots. And frankly, I'm really happy that it's finally here. I knew I would be when it got here because for the last 3 or 4 weeks I've been in hurry up and get here mode because I just can't talk about it anymore. And yet that's exactly what we're going to do today. And by the way, I'm John Rook. Evan Lazar has kindly graced us with his presence today, and I think it only appropriate because Evan is, Mr. Mock on Patriots.com. Certainly in hosting his Catch-22 podcast with Alex Barth, here on Patriots.com as well. And so what we're going to do today is a little old-school talk radio style mock draft. Now, this is something that I did, and actually I got taught how to do by the great Bob Valvano years ago before I actually even started at ESPN Radio. And I admit Bob through his coaching circles, but then I took it back to my local station after being on ESPN with Russell Baxter and some of those others a number of years. And so we learned how to do a mock NFL draft on the radio, on the sports talk shows that we did. And largely we pick, to give you a bit of what will transpire over the next 2 hours, we're going to run out of time because we're going to spend a little time with each writer, only because we want to kind of contrast and compare to some of the thoughts that you've had in the first round and some of the mocks that you've done over the course of the last several weeks as we lead up into the draft. And so we've got beat reporters for each of the first 9 teams in the draft of the first round to actually make the pick based on who just got selected ahead of them. So this is going to be a fire drill for what you see tomorrow night transpire on NFL Network and on ESPN.
Yeah,
how does that sound?
I love that. Yeah, I mean, we've been doing these for a while. Alex Barth and I actually did our own top 10 mocks that we'll compare after the draft to who got the most picks right.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. He does the whole league a lot more than I do, so that was the only time that I had done that exercise. And it gets complicated where you start to think about trades and different scenarios and all this type of stuff, and then you get to the 10th pick and you're like, oh wait, Joe Alt's still on the board somehow. I forgot to take him, and you have to really think about it. Yeah.
Well, what we've got here, we've got the first 9 slotted. We don't have anybody. We didn't have anybody from Atlanta. The 2-3 guys we contacted were unavailable.
Oh.
So I'm going to open it up right now to our audience who may be listening here today, and whoever wants to select for the Falcons at number 8, I want you to call right now on the listener line, okay? 855-PATS-500, okay? Talk to Marine. Say, I'll make the Falcons pick at 8, and the Marine will tell you when to call back in to make that pick. Does that work? Let's just open it up.
Yeah.
And just make the pick. And then what we'll do after 9, we have Rich Cimini from the Jets to round out the top 10 to get to, I want to get to 11 because quite frankly, that's the one pick that if the Patriots are going to trade down to, all the talk has been centered around, right?
Yeah.
So, Evan, I may let you step in at 10 and 11.
Sure.
If you're still around by that time.
I'll be here.
If you don't need to go anywhere.
I don't know. This is what I'm doing.
This is you're all draft all the time.
This
24
is my
hours a day.
favorite day of the draft
Okay.
because the hay is in the barn, John.
Okay.
You know, there's nothing left to do.
Perfect. All
Yeah.
right. So then that's right. Let's get on with it and get over it. All right. So with the first pick of the 2024 Patriots.com NFL mock draft, it will be the Chicago Bears who are officially on the clock. I really kind of get nauseous when I hear that, on ESPN and NFL Network when they say, the Patriots are on the clock. Well, yeah, of course. That's a phrase that is probably as old as Mel Kiper Jr. Or older than Mel Kiper Jr. But technically, I guess it's become a part of the vernacular now. So what that means clearly is that once the clock starts, you've got X number of minutes. Can we go through some of the ground rules? How many minutes do teams actually have to make their first round pick?
So it's 10 now.
Okay.
It used to be more.
Yeah.
I think it used to be 15, and then they think they might have went down to 12. Now they're down to 10. Yeah, so most of the time they know who they're picking before they're on the clock, right?
They should.
The question is just the phone call, right? Just kind of buying time a lot of the time for a team that maybe wants to trade up into the pick to give their teams opportunities to negotiate on the phone and see. But even those, the Patriots have had phone calls with teams over the last couple of days. There's a lot of reporting out there on that. They have frameworks of deals in place with some teams, I'm sure, that, okay, once you're on the clock, maybe you ask for that extra pick and you get, you really try to, all right, this best and final right now. But they've talked to Minnesota. They've talked to the New York Giants. They've talked to the Las Vegas Raiders. They know what the general structure of the trade could possibly look like, and that's what the conversations have been the last couple of days.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's kind of fun to do this if we can, especially because mocks are made for mistakes, and I don't know that I've ever heard of anybody that had a perfect mock draft in the first round. Thank you. So Marine says Rodrigo in Florida is going to make the Atlanta pick for us.
Love that.
Outstanding, Rodrigo. All right, you need to step up to the plate when it's time to go. All right, very good. So we actually have a listener that's going to make the pick for the Falcons at number 8.
Maybe let's see if Terry Fontenot agrees with him. We'll find out.
Exactly. I think we should. God, wouldn't that have been something though if it had been Bill Belichick as the head coach making that pick? Then we know that would have been a trade down, right?
Or Dallas Turner, or one of
Something
the defensive players that he really liked.
All right, before we kind of start the proceedings here, and Herb Arkush, who covers the Bears for Pro Football Weekly, he's going to be the Hub Arkush. Thank you. Did I say Herb? Yeah, I know it's Hub Arkush. Thank you. My mistake. That's I can read, but I can't pronounce. Okay, Hub Arkush for Pro Football Weekly, who covers the Bears. He's going to make the first pick for the Bears in just a few minutes. I think though that this is probably the most anticlimactic first pick that I can think of really in recent memory. We've known it's pretty much going to be Caleb Williams for how long now? Since he became eligible to be drafted?
Yeah, I would say, Trevor Lawrence is probably the last one where you pretty much knew, and I think they're very similar, where their best season was actually not their draft year. It was the year before they were drafted. Yeah. So Trevor Lawrence wins the national championship with Clemson. They go, I think they went undefeated. They lost like one game or something like that, something crazy. And then they have a bad year, maybe a little bit of a down year, and then he gets drafted, right? Caleb Williams wins the Heisman Trophy last year. This year he was good still, but not the Heisman Trophy winning season that he had the year before, and then he gets drafted. So both those guys, I feel like Trevor, we knew 2 years out that he was going to be the number 1 pick in 2021. And with Caleb, I feel like we knew after the 2022 season that he was going to be the 2024 first-round pick, or first overall pick. So similar situations, I guess, with those guys, but it's generational, right? It's Trevor, it's Andrew Luck, it's that type of talent that is such a slam dunk, no-brainer first-round pick, and I think Caleb's in that category.
I kind of thought that about Caleb when I saw him when he was even at Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Before he transferred to USC. I'm kind of thinking, this guy's got, high first round, if not number 1 overall pick kind of talent. You kind of could kind of tell that coming. Now, this being said, with, the first pick, and Washington holds the second pick. Patriots hold the third pick. Has been well documented at this point in time. We're expecting, we think, at this time, quarterbacks to come off the board, barring something unforeseen over the next 24 hours or so. And this will be the fun of listening to this on the podcast after the draft is over to see how close we actually get, which is part of the challenge here, part of the fun that we're trying to do. Let's see how well we can measure up because we're trying to take into consideration. I know one of the things you just did in your last mock here on the website was you tried to take that trade possibility into consideration, which we will be discussing here today.
Yeah, I think that was, as you do these mock drafts, and mock drafts to me are thought exercises and more to talk about what players are on the board or in these areas.
Sure.
I think too much stock is put into, is it actually an accurate after the draft, or are we actually right about it? It's not really the purpose. The purpose is just to create the content to get the conversation started. And so that's why when we get into third, fourth, fifth mock draft iterations like we do this time of year, I start to just throw around scenarios.
Start to glaze over a little bit.
I start to just throw around scenarios. What happens if they do trade down with Minnesota? Who are the players that would be on the board in that range? How would they address their needs if that were the case? What would happen if they stick and pick at 3? I did a mock draft of that.
Exactly.
You
get out your would you board as opposed to your Ouija board. You get your would you board. And would you take so and so with this pick? Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I got that. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. The late drum riff. I like that. We'll take that anytime we can get it. All right. So Chicago has the number 1 pick. Hub Arkush, who covers the Bears, covers the NFL for Pro Football Weekly, is kind enough to join us here inside Patriots Playbook on Patriots.com. Hub, it's John and Evan here in Foxborough. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Good to be with you guys.
All right, so we're talking about one of the more anticlimactic picks, I think, of the last decade or so in the NFL. Maybe you can give us a sense. Has there been much, if any, talk in Bears circles about not going with Caleb Williams and going a different direction?
No, there's basically no talk at this point. Everybody assumes that the Bears are going to take Caleb Williams. He has been the number 1 rated prospect in this draft for really over a year already, and nothing has changed. There were some moments, a month or 2 ago when some questions about his dad's involvement in his family and his not having an agent and all that. But on the football side, there really are no questions. And he is going to be the first player taken. I'm 99% sure by the Bears, but if they still decide to trade that pick like they did last year, whoever trades for it is going to use it to take him.
Can you kind of give us a sense then of if, where the other needs are that the Bears really should be looking at, maybe in addition to quarterback?
Well, clearly their greatest need is quarterback. Their second biggest need right now is for another edge rusher. They did a great job trading for Montez Sweat in the middle of last season. They've got a number 1, but you need 2. And that would be need number 1 after quarterback would be edge rusher. After that, it's just about getting better. They were improving the second half of last season. If they see an upgrade on the offensive line, particularly at offensive tackle, maybe left tackle, they would consider that high in the draft. They definitely need more depth at safety, and they need more depth at wide receiver. And a lot of people think that that 9th pick, if they use it, is going to be on a wide receiver if one of the top 3 are still there.
Okay, all right. Certainly all makes sense to me. It jibes with everything that I've read about the Chicago Bears thus far. All right, so let's make it official with the first pick of the number 1 of the 2024 Patriots.com Patriots Playbook mock draft. The Chicago Bears select, and I'll let you finish the sentence, Hub.
Caleb Williams.
Quarterback, USC.
That was easy.
Yeah, that was easy. Okay. See, but that's how we kind of play the game around here. I'm nobody's shocked and surprised by that, but that's why I asked about the other needs because, if you're a fan of the Bears, you're certainly looking at those other needs. And I know the Patriots are basically in the same boat. Yes, they need a quarterback. Yes, they probably want a quarterback. Yes, they have many other needs. So that's part of the reason why we kind of do the compare and contrast and just to see how other teams are kind of handling it, right?
Yeah, that's what this draft is all about. That's what these mock drafts are all about. There's no question that the top 3 teams in the draft, the Bears, the Commanders, and then the Patriots, their single greatest need is at quarterback, I think. And fortunately, they've got a draft where there are at least 5, maybe 6 quarterbacks going to go in the first round. And once you get past Caleb Williams, who is a clear number 1 with everybody but me, by the way, I'll explain that in a minute.
Ooh, okay.
You go to Jayden Daniels, obviously you go to Drake Maye, but what I'm hearing from a really good source in Washington is that the Commanders are thinking JJ McCarthy at number 2.
Wow.
I love that. Bringing some scoops onto the.
I like this. Hub, thank you for that. So this could be a little late sentiment for JJ at number 2 then.
Well, It's all been coming on in the last week or two. Guys, I've been saying for a year now, and it has nothing to do with the fact that I'm a Michigan alum, which I am, but I think McCarthy is the best quarterback in this draft, or is going to be, I should say, the best NFL quarterback. He's not necessarily the best quarterback right now. I've studied him. I've seen every one of his games. He reminds me more than anybody. People keep talking about Patrick Mahomes. He reminds me of Tom Brady, and that's who he's been working with, by the way, for the last year and a half. The source has been really good for me in Washington in the past, and he told me again yesterday that he thinks they're locked in on McCarthy. Now, I'm not hearing that from anybody else, but it would be interesting. They've also been looking at Jayden Daniels, and there are questions about Daniels with some of the attitude stuff and things like that. I think that Daniels is probably the more likely with everything we've heard the last week or two. But I really like the source that's telling me, and I really like McCarthy, and so I won't be surprised if the Commanders take him.
What is it about McCarthy that appeals to you personally as an observer of the game?
His intelligence and his game management, not to mention the fact that he does have, high first-round athletic talent. There's no question about that. But he sees the game, he reads the field, he makes decisions, he manages the game, he works with his head coach. That's why I keep coming back to Brady, and I just think he's that type of quarterback. But if you look at his size, if you look at his physical ability, if you look at everything, he matches up top 1, top 2. The one place where he doesn't is on his college stats. But that's not because he wasn't good enough. That's because they were running a different scheme. They were running an NFL run-first offense, and he just didn't get to throw the ball as much as the other top quarterbacks did in college. But if you study the tape, you're going to see a guy who is going to remind you when you're watching him of Brady. Interesting.
I know that there are a lot of people within the Patriots organization that also like JJ McCarthy. In fact, there's been a straight McCarthy lean, I think, for most of the last month until just the last couple of days here in terms of who the Patriots favor at quarterback for the number 3 spot. So the fact that, maybe somebody else is starting to wonder, what this is all about, I guess doesn't really come as a surprise, but the way that you describe him, I'd say, is the way that most people kind of feel about him. But, it's just that because he's such a late comer, I don't know if anybody wants to jump out and take that shot. And maybe the Commanders will.
Well, what's really interesting, guys, is I'm not sure it's as late as everybody thinks. These mock drafts, all of us who do these mock drafts are really a waste of time. I mean, they're kind of fun.
Okay, thanks for playing our game.
Right. Well, at the end of the day, we're not making the picks.
Of course.
So I wouldn't say it's a waste of time, but you're not necessarily getting the best information from us. But what's happened now is all the athletic directors, are not athletic directors, but general managers are checking in. And
Sure.
we're talking to them now.
Sure.
And, they've been high on McCarthy from the beginning, and particularly got higher on him at the Combine. And now that they're talking to some media, and some media are starting to hear more, that's why McCarthy has been flying up boards the last few weeks. It's not that anything's changed. It's just that now we're getting information from the people who really know what they're talking about, not us media people who know a little bit what we're talking about, but not as much as we think.
All right. Hub, that's great stuff. And thank you for playing our game anyway. It's for entertainment purposes only, of course, as we all know, but at the same time, it's kind of cool to get the thought process of what people are hearing from, people that might be in position to know. So that's why we asked you, and thank you for taking the time today. Really appreciate it.
Well, it's fun, guys. Thanks for having me. Happy to join you anytime.
You got it.
Thanks for coming on.
Hub Arkush, who covers the Bears for Pro Football Weekly, joining us here on Patriots Playbook. So a little bit of a scoop there, and we'll find out a little bit more because Washington Commanders are now on the clock, and Ben Standig from The Athletic is going to join us to make the Washington Commanders pick at number 2. We're going to find out, I guess, whether or not he might be hearing some of the similar things that Hub was hearing.
Yeah, look, I think everybody that's listened to me over the last couple months knows I disagree with Hub about JJ McCarthy.
Well, you and I are also. Okay. I should also, because we haven't had a chance to converse in a couple of months as well.
Yeah.
I also agree with you about JJ. I think he's a really good college quarterback.
Yeah.
I think that he could develop into a serviceable NFL quarterback. I don't think he's worth the pick at 3, and that's no fault of his or anybody else's.
Yeah, and I think that the way that Hub described him is is accurate in terms of how he manages the game and all that kind of stuff. I'm just not taking a game manager with the second or third overall pick in the draft.
Right.
And I think the thing that, not that people around here necessarily discredit, because we all know how great Brady is and was, kind of chalk it up to that, Brady's best traits were just, those types of things, and they kind of undersell the arm talent and the creativity and all the other stuff.
Evan, if you're comparing JJ McCarthy to Tom Brady, that's your first big damn mistake. Okay, you can't
Poor Hub.
do that.
We're going to disagree.
Well, yeah. And Hub is a great writer, but you can't do that to the kid.
Yeah.
And unless you have what I would call transcendental talent, something that is worth, by God, the first pick or second pick or even the third pick in the draft, I'm not doing it. I would trade down and get multiple picks. Teams that are at the top of the draft generally need more than teams at the bottom of the draft.
Yeah.
So that's what I would do. It all makes sense. It's a typical, somewhat ironic, Bill Belichick draft.
Yeah, I just think with McCarthy, the comp that I've come to a lot of the time with him is Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
Because I think Brock Purdy has all of the things that Hub was talking about. Game management, it factor, winning intangibles, leadership, all that type of stuff. I just see a little bit more, when you watch McCarthy play, and I'm not talking about the volume of throws that he was making.
Yeah.
When you watch the throws that he's actually does make on tape, none of it screams playmaker to me. And there's a lot of zoning in on first reads and kind of just making throws that way.
Yeah, maybe if you had more of a veteran, talented team,
right?
You insert JJ McCarthy.
If you're the
lineup.
Minnesota Vikings, and I've said this from the beginning, the Minnesota Vikings, I know we have Ben waiting. The Minnesota Vikings are the perfect fit for JJ McCarthy because he's going to come in there with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and a really good play caller in Kevin O'Connell. And he's going to get to be Brock Purdy. He's going to get to just distribute the ball out to those guys and manage the
hell
game
out of it,
and do all that kind of stuff. If he's asked to be your franchise's savior, like he would have to be in Washington or here in New England.
You might be asking too much.
Yeah.
All right, so as we said, Washington's up next. Ben Standig, who covers the Commanders. How many times have I wanted to say their other team name today? Already several, half a dozen at least. Ben Standig, who covers the Commanders in the NFL for The Athletic, joins us here inside Patriots Playbook. Hey, Ben, it's John and Evan here in Foxborough. Thanks for a few minutes.
No, thanks for having me. I was enjoying that conversation about McCarthy because it's some version I've had of that 100 times over the last 3 months.
Sure, and sometimes it helps and even hurts or gives you an idea maybe of which way you want to go if you're confirming your own thoughts and fears. We should mention that Hub Arkush just picked for Chicago and picked Caleb Williams, obviously, as the number one pick, but for the purposes of our mock. But he also said that he's got sources right now telling him in Washington that there is some serious late sentiment for selecting JJ McCarthy at number 2. So I'm wanting to know if you're buying or selling on that theory.
Yeah, so we've discussed here, collectively, I guess, over the last few days about McCarthy in the sense of if somehow, because of this Jayden Daniels recent, I don't know if kerfuffle is too strong or not strong enough, but like whatever was happening with this top golf thing, and if there was a disagreement, should hypothetically that situation go awry, who would they pick? And I think McCarthy might be the answer, and in part for some of the reasons you just mentioned. You guys talked about that he's got a lot of Brock Purdy in him, right? Well, Adam Peters just came from the place, the Commanders GM. He just came from Brock Purdy land with the Niners.
He did.
And Dan Quinn, the head coach, his offensive coordinator when he went to the Super Bowl with the Falcons was, of course, Kyle Shanahan. So how much of that influence is on these guys? And I agree that Minnesota would be a better fit. But, if you're willing to give him almost a redshirt season, right, then – and this team realistically is not going to – probably I imagine similar to how it is viewed there with you guys, that, they're not being viewed realistically as a wild card contender, that this is going to be a rebuilding year to some degree. So, therefore, you can kind of afford to let him sit – build up more pieces, and then perhaps plug him into a better situation. All that said, at this point, I think I'm fairly locked in to Jayden Daniels at 2. I mean, after the coaching search situation, I'm not prepared to claim anything as a lock until it's done. but there's just been the evidence has just piled up. I've had Daniels as my number as the pick going back to early March, and I think at this point I just don't see it being a different way. But I do think McCarthy, hypothetically, if they did switch it up, I think I right now would lean him over Maye.
So this then could be the first curve in the road on the NFL draft for Thursday night. If the Commanders decide to make a little bit of a switch here, I would tend to agree, with you, I think with Evan, with a lot of the others that have come along here and let their opinions be known, that, to me, and I love the word you used, kerfuffle, because I kind of think that, I tend to believe that's what it is, but again, I wasn't there, so I don't know. But if it becomes a question of issue or, what's the word I'm looking for here?
Contention.
Yeah, really. I mean, how serious is it, right? Okay,
Yeah.
So if it's deemed not, then yeah, you got to go. You got a job to do. You're trying to become a good, solid playoff team, a contending team again. And to me, I'm looking for a dynamic guy. With one of the first three picks of the draft, and of all of the quarterback candidates, and there are probably 5 or 6 of them. They're all candidates to be taken in the first round of the draft coming up. To me, Daniels has as much, if not more, I think, overall individual talent than any of the guys, and that includes Caleb Williams. I saw a lot of Caleb Williams when he played at Oklahoma, less so, I think, when he moved on to USC just because of the time difference involved. But I've always loved Jayden Daniels' game. He can make things happen with or without the ball, and that's kind of what I think a team who needs a quarterback should be looking in this modern-era game.
Yeah, no, there is obviously a lot to like with Daniels. I did a story a couple weeks ago on The Athletic where I surveyed 17 different sources from GMs and coaches and others to give me their rank order of the quarterbacks and then tell me what they think of them. And Caleb Williams was the clear 1, but Jayden Daniels was the clear 2. And some coaches or some of the sources said that they would pick Jayden Daniels over Caleb Williams. Obviously, there's some general concern about he's not the biggest guy, as we know,
right.
And certain aspects. He obviously had 2 incredible receivers at LSU that are both probably going to be picked in the first round. The offense was not maybe the most sophisticated relative to the NFL, but all that said, it's been generally pretty positive on him from people that I spoke to, and again, to the point from before. This is year 1 of a new regime for a new head coach, a new GM, basically a new owner. Like last year was kind of not Josh Harris's team. He just he didn't buy it until right before the training camp started. So they have time on their side. I know the fans don't. Fans are frustrated and ready to win, but they have time to wait. They don't in other words, they might as well go for the upside, like you're saying, and that's Daniels more than it is McCarthy. So yeah, I mean, I think it's, I would pick Daniels. It's what I've been picking, and I think it's partly for some of those reasons that you said. And look, also this is a business, as we know, and they need to get fans back in. And having the reigning Heisman Trophy winner with the highlight reel that he had, that's good business. So I think all these factors go into Daniels being the call.
So Ben Standing from The Athletic, picking for the Washington Commanders, selects Jayden Daniels with the number 2 spot, quarterback from LSU.
Makes sense. Yeah, Ben, I just wanted to ask you one question about Cliff Kingsbury and his role in all this, because when they hired Cliff, I feel like everybody assumed that maybe there would be Caleb Williams, right? Like they might go up to 1 and bring in Caleb. But I also looked at it and said, what a great fit Jayden Daniels would be in that type of offense as well. Where do you think, Cliff's voice comes in? Because obviously the Shanahan guys are maybe a little bit different offensively from what Cliff has run in the past.
Yeah, so you mentioned Caleb Williams. Obviously, that was a thought. The other thought was that Drake Maye in college ran a form of the air raid system that Cliff Kingsbury is known for over his coaching years, more college and pro, but nonetheless. So the thought was there could be some familiarity there. But in terms of style, yeah, Daniels clearly is a really good fit for what we perceive of a Cliff Kingsbury offense. I think the question that we don't know is, what exactly is this offense going to be? That is the question. How much is it going to be, hey, Cliff, you do what you want? How much of it is, hey, we like your mind, but you've got to tailor it to what we specifically are looking for here. And that's been part of why it's been a little bit hard to figure out what they would do for the most part, because I could make cases for any of these quarterbacks. But Daniels, I think, is a really good fit for Kingsbury. And by the way, just for all we know, Kingsbury could be hired as a head coach by somebody next year.
Right.
You can't go into like what he wants too heavily, right? Whereas Quinn and Peters should be here for the long haul. Therefore, their voice has got to matter more than the OC, who it matters, but not. Again, he could be gone by next year if they have a good year, or even if he decides he wants to do something else.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. Hey, Ben, thank you so much for spending a little time with us. Certainly appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You got it. Ben Standig, covering the Washington Commanders and the NFL for The Athletic, and he selects Jayden Daniels, quarterback LSU. So right now we're going kind of by the form chart.
Yeah, I think that this is the way that it's going to go also. I just, when you talk to people and, the things that I've actually gone back and watched some of Jayden Daniels' film and did the same thing with Drake Maye. And I think what you see with Jayden Daniels is that extra time in college, that 6 years that he spent in college, really gave him time to develop as a passer and from the pocket. And he is so much further along mechanically than, let's say, a Lamar Jackson was coming out of Louisville, that really sets a floor that's much, much higher, which is why he could go 2 overall and Lamar lasted all the way to the end of the first round. Mm-hmm. Jayden Daniels is one of those guys that is extremely tied together mechanically.
Does Lamar Jackson's success to this point in time, though, I mean, did it maybe inflate Jayden Daniels' worth?
Absolutely. And we were talking to Elliot Wolf last week at his pre-draft press conference.
Right.
He was in the Cleveland Browns front office when they picked Baker Mayfield in the draft. Obviously, that was Lamar's draft. Mm-hmm. And he kind of took a shot at himself and said, well, we could have picked Lamar Jackson, and we didn't. Yeah. And I think at the time with Lamar, to your point, the league wasn't ready for Lamar Jackson yet. I don't think that they had a lot of guys, 32 offensive coordinators that were confident in their ability to build an offense that Lamar Jackson could operate and would amplify his talent, I think is more the better way to put it. And now I think Lamar is sort of, he's up there as the beacon, right? Like, this is what you're supposed to do. This is how you pointed in the right direction. Yeah. I think Jayden Daniels, though, like I said, one of the things that really impresses me so much with Jayden Daniels is how well he reads the field in terms of full field progression, and how well his whole mechanical chain, as we call it, right? So you have, obviously up here, right? You got to start with the eyes, but then you go eyes, shoulders, hips, feet. And all of it creates a chain of a throwing lane, right? And his ability to go read to read and then carry the rest of the chain with him as he does it so that he's accurate to all 3 levels and accurate past that first read in the progression is probably the best out of anybody in the draft.
And that's what really separates the elite quarterbacks from good quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Is they have more of that complete chain, as you suggested, physically, if not mentally, and that's what separates a first-round pick from, say, a 4th or 5th or a 6th-round pick.
Yeah, my biggest concerns with Daniels are I do have some concern about the arm talent. I don't think he's got elite arm talent. I think he has above average arm strength, but I don't think that he's elite in the same category as Caleb, certainly not. And I think that Drake Maye and JJ McCarthy might have a little bit more zip on the ball than he does as well.
Interesting.
And then the other thing I would just say is that he has a propensity to pass up things in the middle of the field. Like if he's throwing, a dig route or has to layer something over a linebacker or something like that, he doesn't make those types of throws with regularity.
Doesn't he also have a little bit more of a propensity to pull it down and run with it? Just
yeah,
of his
I think some teams that you talk to would prefer him to keep his eyes down the field a little bit more and not always immediately default into scramble mode. It's so hard to train that out of him, though, because when he can scramble for 50 yards...
I mean, why? Hey, okay, let's go with a 6-yard out here, or I'm going to scramble for 50. Well, which one would you take?
Right, but there's just times on his film, certainly, where he does pass up the 6-yard out, or he does pass up the in-breaking route. and instead he'll run for 50, but at the end of the run he's going to take a shot, and then it just those types of things add up.
All right, third pick of the first round of the NFL draft, of course, belongs to your New England Patriots, and for our purposes here, the beat reporter of the New England Patriots for the Boston Globe and frequent contributor here inside the Playbook on Patriots.com radio is Nicole C. Yang, and Nicole joins us here today. Nicole, thanks for a little bit of time today. It's appreciated.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys.
Well, so you know the drill, how we play mock drafts here. With the third pick of the 2024 NFL mock draft on Patriots.com, Nicole Yang making the selection for the New England Patriots, and the New England Patriots select whom?
I think you got to go with Drake Maye.
Okay. I don't think anybody would be surprised by that pick at this stage of the game, especially with Williams going 1 for our purposes and Daniels going 2. And the Patriots have made it known they certainly want a quarterback. We know that they need a quarterback. How close, Nicole, based on your observations and what you've heard and what you've written, how close are the Patriots still, because obviously they won't make this pick until a little over 24 hours from the moment that we're speaking right now, but how close are the Patriots to thinking seriously about trading down, and has anybody offered them the quote-unquote bag that Gerard Mayo has talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're definitely seriously considering it. You can tell in that Elliott Wolf and Gerard Mayo both are making it very clear in their availabilities that they are open for business, and you contrast that with how Adam Peters handled his pre-draft availability, basically saying that they're going to stick at 2 and sort of shutting down any trade speculation. So I think the Patriots are definitely open to that possibility. It's just a matter of, like you said, if they get offered the bag. And I just don't think we'll know if that's happening until closer to the draft. I think even Bill Belichick said in his appearance on the Pat McAfee show recently that it really takes up until those last 12 hours to see what really is going to materialize. So I think they're holding out for some sort of Godfather offer, but if that doesn't happen, and as of right now it doesn't seem like that's the case, I think they're also comfortable standing pat and taking Drake Maye.
Where are you on the whole, Drake versus Jayden versus JJ conundrum that apparently has been, certainly most of the I guess really the talk back over the course of the last month. What have been your observations, and based on what you believe the Patriots really need to run that position? And obviously they've got a quarterback that they went out and they got free agent wise to sort of quarterback this thing, and literally quarterback this thing until they can bring the young guy along. Which one has sort of caught your eye as maybe being the fit for the Patriots?
Yeah, so I'm definitely a little bit biased in that I went to UNC for Drake Maye's pro day, and I didn't go to LSU to see Jayden Daniels or Michigan to see JJ McCarthy. So I've seen Drake Maye up close, and I understand why Gerard Mayo was gushing about his ceiling, because he does have really impressive arm strength. He can sling it. His size is impressive. His mobility, I can see why they are intrigued by him. And in terms of Jayden versus Drake, unfortunately for where the Patriots are picking, they don't really have a choice there. It's just going to be whichever of the two is available. If Drake Maye surprisingly goes to and Jayden Daniels falls to the Patriots, my concern there is just with his size and his frame, and given his play style. Anthony Richardson has about 40 pounds on Jayden Daniels, and he played 4 games last year, and so obviously it's not a one-to-one comparison, but I just think given how he plays and given his sort of slight frame, you could be looking at durability as a potential weakness. So I Drake Maye falling to the Patriots at 3, I think that would be a good fit, and I think if they surround him with the necessary tools, give him the necessary support system, he sort of develop into that franchise role.
Sure. All right. Makes sense to me. Is Drake Maye the kind of guy that you think could win the job? If not right away, then at some point in time this season? Or do you kind of feel like this is Jacoby Brissett's job to, sort of, keep until, I don't know, how long do they go with this thing?
Yeah, Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. I am undecided and not really sure how they're going to handle that. My guess is that it's Jacoby Brissett's job through at least the first half of the season. Like, do I agree with Elliott Wolf that the roster, sort of as currently constructed, is equipped to support a rookie quarterback? Not entirely, but I think it'll be interesting to see how the offense looks with Jacoby, if the offensive line can hold up, if the receiver help, as Elliott said, is actually underrated, then yeah, maybe slot Drake in if they feel he's comfortable. But if the offense looks as it did last year and it's still super dysfunctional and there's no pass protection, then it just doesn't make sense, in my opinion, to put Drake in and just give him like a full redshirt year and start in year 2. Like that, I don't think should be an unpopular decision, and you can look at quarterbacks across the league where that worked out well for them.
Ev, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Nicole, I actually wanted to ask you a different question, if that's okay.
Yeah,
and hi, by the way. I just wanted to ask you, what your read is on the hierarchy here in New England, and this is obviously a subject that we dance around at times on here, right? But Jonathan Kraft, his role in all of this, how do you read who's making these types of decisions? Because I think there's a lot of Patriots fans out there that are reading some of the reports and thinking the Krafts are the ones that are actually pulling the strings.
Yeah, so I'm choosing to take Gerard, Elliott, and Robert at face value, and that might be a mistake on my part, but that's how I am analyzing the situation. I think, yes, the Krafts are obviously invested and they care about the future of the franchise and they want to know what is going on with the pick. They want to know what the team's plans are. Like, they care in that regard. Do I think the Krafts are pouring through the prospects and sharing their opinion on them? No. Do I think they aren't giving their full trust to Elliott and Gerard to make the decisions? Also, no. I do think they are deferring to the decision makers, but it doesn't surprise me that they are invested and that they want this pick to pan out and that they would prefer it's a quarterback. I would say that's true of a lot of people involved in the situation. But just listening to how Gerard and Elliott have answered questions about their involvement, they are just so firm in saying that they're not involved in football operations and that they're not. I think if they were involved in football operations as intimately as maybe fans are concerned about, the way that Elliott and Gerard would answer those questions would be a little bit different.
Yeah. I think so too, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm also of the opinion, and this is not meant to disparage anybody, but sometimes you can't believe everything you hear or you read. You just can't. Not in this day and age anyway.
Yeah.
So, I prefer to let as much action do the speaking for me, and that's kind of the way that we try to handle things around here, especially since, as Evan suggested, every once in a while we walk a tightrope or two. But that's just the nature of the job. Yeah, it's just the nature of the job. Hey, Nicole, thanks for hanging out with us for a few minutes. Appreciate it. Good to talk with you, and I hope we'll get to see you again soon.
Thanks, Nicole.
Likewise, guys. Thanks.
You got it. Nicole Yang, Boston Globe, with the selection of Drake Maye. So we've had QB.
Not
the first
shocked.
3 picks. No. And I think this is what, if anybody had to, plunk down some good hard cash on that, I think most people would probably go that route.
Yeah. I was with Nicole at the North Carolina Pro Day, and, it was an impressive throwing session. Did he hit every throw perfectly? No, he didn't.
I don't think you'd expect him to.
But when you come to see the tools with Drake Maye, and I've been a Drake Maye guy from the jump, so obviously people know where I stand on this. But I think the biggest thing that I would preach to Patriots fans with Drake Maye is that he's not a finished product. He's not ready to go necessarily week 1. I don't think. Do I think that he's as much of a project as other people do? No. And I think that there's a really good chance, and this is where the Patriots are going to have to stick to their guns a little bit, there's a really good chance that we get out there in August and Drake Maye is lighting up practice, and it is clearly the best quarterback out of the 3 quarterbacks that the Patriots have. And the obvious will be the talent, right? He took a guy 3 overall. You would hope that he would stand above Jacoby Brissett and Bailey Zappi.
110%. If you got a guy that's got the talent and he's showing that talent, you got to play it.
Right. So that's going to be the question is, are they patient with him for his what's probably the betterment of his long-term future in the league, or are they just ready to throw him to the fire? And it can work both ways.
Sure can.
Josh Allen played right away
Yeah.
in Buffalo,
Yeah.
and he worked out just fine. Jordan Love didn't, and he's also working out just fine, right? So you can go either way with it. I just think that for Patriots fans, I would just say to let's let it play out in terms of when he's going to play, because I do think that we're all pretty confident. And Nicole mentioned Belichick's appearance on McAfee, and I thought that was a good shout that Bill said it's really like 12 hours before the draft that people really start to understand what everybody's doing.
All right, so now is where we kind of I think we're going to line up for our first non-quarterback to be taken potentially here.
Maybe, unless they trade.
We don't know unless some kind of trade is made. So the Arizona Cardinals select at number 4, and making the pick for the Cardinals is Darren Urban, who joined us from ArizonaCardinals.com. Hey, Darren, it's John and Evan here in Foxborough. How's it going?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Great. So tell us where we are with the Cardinals and pick number 4, and will that pick be a non-quarterback?
Obviously, if they stay there, I think it's a non-quarterback. I don't think there's any question about that. They're happy with Kyler Murray right now. He's the guy that they want to ride with, and there's plenty of other places that they need to look.
But
I think go ahead. Well, I mean, when you're struggling the way they have in terms of wins the last couple of years, that's where it goes, and they need to get him a weapon. And I know that ultimately there's lots of receivers out there, and the possibility of a trade down does exist. But I also firmly believe that it's going to take a big package to move the Cardinals off of this 4th pick. And if somebody wants to wow them, great. And if not, I think they're going to stay. And I'm going to say it's Marvin Harrison. It makes a lot of sense. I know there's a lot of talk about where he falls with the other 2 receivers, and people want to say, well, maybe Odunze or Malik Nabers ranks higher than Harrison on some boards, and that's possible. But I'm going to stay chalk here and say they would take Harrison.
All right, so Marvin Harrison, the pick at 4. What kind of a package do you think it would take from Minnesota or whomever to move up to select another quarterback at 4? What have the Cardinals mentioned anything? And you're on the inside there, so you know as well as anybody. Have they mentioned? Gerard Mayo said, "Hey, it'd take a bag, for the Patriots to move at 3." What kind of a bag is in there for the Cardinals for them to move?
Well, obviously they haven't said anything specifically. It's funny you mentioned that Gerard Mayo said a bag. So the other day, Monty Ossenfort, the GM, said it like this. He goes, "I love my house that I'm in. My wife loves the house that I'm in. If somebody comes to my door and makes me an offer that I'm not expecting that's awesome, I'm going to turn around and tell my wife, pack the stuff. We're moving." So I think, does he have something in mind? Of course he does. I mean, if we want to take the one scenario out there that everybody's been talking about, okay, Minnesota's got 11 and 23, and if you look at a lot of the trade charts out there that have floated around the internet for forever, 11 and 23 comes pretty close to adding up to the 4th overall pick. But that's not going to do it. And do I think it would take a future first? Probably, just because you're giving up the potential at a really great player to move all the way down to 11.
Sure.
And it would give them, 3 first-round picks this year, because they already have 27 as well. But I do think he's going to have to be wow, because at some point, Daniel Jeremiah of the NFL Network said this the other day, you want to collect picks, but at some point you got to spend them on players and get difference makers. And I think they have a chance because of the number of picks they have. They have 11 picks overall. They can afford to stay at 4 and do that unless, again, somebody really wows them.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, obviously we're kicking around probably the same trade packages, right? If the Patriots were to trade down with the Cardinals at 4. I have 2 questions. One, do you believe that they love Marvin Harrison Jr. so much that they'd have to move mountains for that pick to trade out of it? Because I agree with you that I think that Harrison makes the most sense for them. And 2, we've been talking a lot on the program so far about JJ McCarthy, and if that bidding war starts for JJ McCarthy with the 4th overall pick between some teams like Minnesota or whatever, that's a pretty advantageous spot for Arizona, who doesn't need a quarterback necessarily to answer those phone calls. So maybe it's a situation where it's when they're on, kind of on the clock, that they are now have a bunch of teams that are knocking down their door, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I've said this for weeks. We were talking about the other day, all of a sudden there's been a couple of national reports out there that says, well, it looks like the Cardinals are going to have to be on the clock before they make this. Yeah, I think I said that back right after the Combine. I'm like, nothing is going to happen until Monty Ossenfort's on the clock because, A, he knows that that's when the most leverage, and B, to me, it would almost be malfeasance from other teams trying to trade up to 4 when quarterbacks could go 1, 2, and 3 and not knowing who the 4th quarterback is there for you to take. I can't imagine every team loves all 4 of these quarterbacks that need quarterbacks. And it just doesn't make any sense to make a deal on anybody's angle unless they know what quarterback is there for. And that's the other issue here. Yes, the Cardinals are in a great place because if a team needs a quarterback and the first 3 go quarterback, then they're the next pick. But that also means 3 quarterbacks are off the board. And we can do the math about quarterbacks in drafts every year. I mean, let's say there's 4 or 5 quarterbacks that go in the first round. The math says 1 could be really good, and probably at least 2 of them are going to bust. So, that's decisions that other people have to make, and are they willing to give up that kind of draft capital to get up there? Whether the Cardinals love Harrison enough or if it's another player, I can't say that for sure. But you can go by what everybody else is talking about and all the other people that look into it, and also the fact that the Cardinals very much could use the number 1 wide receiver and kind of put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. All right, Darren, thanks a lot. We really appreciate it. Not surprised by the pick, and best of luck to you and the Cardinals.
Thanks, Darren.
Thanks, guys.
All right, you got it. So Darren Urban from ArizonaCardinals.com with the 4th pick of our mock draft selects Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver, Ohio State University.
Yeah, I've had Marvin Harrison Jr. as the top receiver in the class wire to wire. I know some people really like Malik Nabers, and I do as well, and I can see some of the arguments of, Malik Nabers is more the Tyreek Hill and Marvin Harrison Jr. is more like a Devontae Adams, right? And it's just kind of how do you want to build your offense and what's more attractive to you as a team. But in terms of, I do strengths and weaknesses. I have a whole spreadsheet out that people can find on Patriots.com. There is not a person that has fewer weaknesses in his weakness box on my spreadsheet
than Marvin Harrison. I advocated for him being the Patriots pick at 3. Yeah. Even though well before, the conversation swung around to getting a quarterback overall, and I thought, well, you know what, maybe the quarterback, and of course I think with a lot of the late sentiment it kind of pushed the quarterbacks up to the top of the list, but take Marvin Harrison at 3, and then if you really like JJ McCarthy or maybe Michael Penix at Washington, one of those guys could be around. You could make that choice with someone like Minnesota at 11.
Yeah, so really with Marvin Harrison, the two weaknesses that I have written down are he is a little slender, like he could add some muscle, some beef to the frame, so to speak, and he's not overly elusive with the ball in his hands. Like he's not a big time tackle breaker after the catch. But if those are your 2 biggest concerns about a player, and I don't think that he has some nagging injuries at Ohio State, and that contributes to maybe the slender frame or, needing to bulk up a little bit. But I also wonder, was he just sitting out those games because of his long-term future was more important than maybe playing the extra quarter against, some Nebraska or, whatever Big Ten team he's playing against that week. So that's a part of it as well. But yeah, he's one of the more well-rounded and just least bustable players that I have done in this process. Caleb is extremely talented, but there are reasons to think that Caleb could bust. There are. Marvin Harrison Jr., maybe he's not a Hall of Famer, but I can't imagine that he's not good. in the NFL. It just that I can't really see that path.
As perfect a draft pick maybe as we got on the board this year. Then.
Yeah,
for sure, right?
Yep.
All right, that's Marvin Harrison for Ford at Arizona. Fifth pick of the draft belongs to the Los Angeles Chargers. Jeff Miller covers the NFL and covers the Chargers for the Los Angeles Times. Kind enough to join us here in the Playbook for the Chargers pick at number 5. Hey, Jeff, it's John and Evan here in Foxborough. Thanks for the time today.
You bet. How you guys doing?
We're good.
Doing
We're good.
well, thanks.
We're having some fun right now. It's staying pretty much true to form. So we're curious if you could just bring us up to date on where you feel like the Chargers' primary needs are. And we know they pick at 5. They also pick again in round 2. I think at 37 overall. Where you feel like their important needs are, and what you think they'll do with that pick at number 5.
Well, they are actually short bodies at wide receiver. They don't even have enough guys right now to fill out that position group. So we know they have issues there. They could use literally 2 starting cornerbacks. They could use an outside corner and an inside corner, play slot. And then they need the interior defensive line. And then having said all that, a lot of the speculation has them taking an offensive lineman first. So there's a lot of moving parts here with this roster being rebuilt with a new regime up top. And I think sort of the overriding feeling seems to be that they are looking to trade out of that number 5 spot, hoping that there's a team that wants to move up and maybe get a quarterback. Or you guys are just talking Marvin Harrison Jr. If he's still there, maybe somebody wants to move up, the Jets or somebody. The Chargers might move back and feel like with the depth at offensive line and a wide receiver, they could still get both of those 2 positions, later in the first round. I think ideally would be perfect for these guys.
Okay. So what's your inclination then, based on what are we? We're not – we're a little over 24 hours away from the pick being made, almost 30 hours away from probably the pick being made. Do the Chargers keep the number 5 pick, or do they trade it?
If I had to guess right now, and it would just be a guess, I think they'll trade it just because they want to accumulate picks. Because I just rattled off all the needs they have, and they're really interested. Joe Ortiz, the new GM, and Jim Harbaugh, of course, the head coach, of building up the depth with this team, which we have not seen here for years. I mean, they've always been a top-heavy roster without a lot of depth. They're determined to get away from that. So they want to try to accumulate more picks and get more shots at some quality players in this draft and even next year. So my guess is if I was pushed to make a decision, I think they'll trade it. But they very well could keep the pick if they don't get something they like.
Okay, who's the trade then with, do you think? Is it with Minnesota at 11? What have you heard along those lines?
Yeah, Minnesota is the most popular trade partner for them. So I think that would be an ideal situation for the Chargers. But anyone who's followed this team knows that the ideal usually doesn't happen for the Chargers.
Yeah, well, we've had sometimes those feelings around here ourselves. All right, so if they trade, let's play it out then. So if they trade with Minnesota at 11, they end up swapping picks. So then at that pick down at 11, who do you think would be available potentially for the Chargers to take, or who would they like to take in a perfect world?
I think J.C. Latham, the offensive lineman, would be a guy they definitely would target there. If they stay at 5, a lot of the mock drafts that I've been a part of, I have them taking Joe Alt because he's a big time tackle, obviously at Notre Dame. Now he played on the left side at Notre Dame. These guys would be looking for someone to play right tackle. But I think Alt could probably do that. So, but I think whatever they do, the feeling I've gotten pretty strong so far is that they're going to probably take an offensive lineman with the first pick, wherever it is. That's assuming they weren't sitting at 5 and Marvin Harrison was still there.
Okay.
Jeff, I have a tinfoil hat theory for you that I want to ask you about, and that is that
Absolutely.
I think that this JJ McCarthy buzz, which obviously I'm sure you can imagine we've been discussing ad nauseum here in New England with JJ McCarthy, I have felt for a while that the one that is putting the buzz out in the ether is his old college coach, Jim Harbaugh, with the intention of maybe having the best non-quarterback in the draft fall to him at 5 overall. Right? If you follow me, 4 quarterbacks go in the top 4. the Chargers are on the clock at 5, and now all of a sudden Marvin Harrison Jr. is available for them at 5th overall. Joe Alt's available, something along those lines. How much do you think Harbaugh's influence on JJ has the league, eating it all up, right, so to speak? And then also there's absolutely no chance that he loves JJ so much that he's taking JJ and trading Herbert, right?
I think you're onto something there. I loved at the owners' meetings when Harbaugh repeated something he said often, is that McCarthy's the best quarterback in this draft. And he said he's the best quarterback at playing quarterback, which is perfect Harbaughism. I don't even know what that means. But from what I understand, the one thing, to be fair to Harbaugh, is apparently at the Big Ten Media Day back in August, he compared McCarthy to Andrew Luck, who he coached at Stanford. So he's been on this thing for a while. But I hear you. I'm with you. I think, back in the owners' meetings, I know I wrote about it, and I think a couple other people did too, is we pointed out the irony of, him touting his former college quarterback. It helps the former college quarterback, and it helps him.
Right.
Talk about Harbaugh. So there's definitely something to that, 100%. But like I said, he has been really pushing McCarthy, apparently since back in August. So he's just kind of continuing the company line for him, I think.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, does make sense. Hey, Jeff, thank you for the time, and thank you for the little change-up we got here. We've been getting nothing but fastballs to start this draft off, so we kind of figured a change-up was needed here.
Well, I'm just trying to do my part, trying to keep it interesting for people. We got 24 more hours. Hold on here.
I know.
We're almost there, guys.
Thank you. That's funny. We were just laughing about that. It's like, can we please do this now? Thank you. Appreciate you, Jeff. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Have a good day.
You got it. That's Jeff Miller, who covers the Los Angeles Chargers for the Los Angeles Times, and his selection is a trade with Minnesota at 11. And that means then that would put Minnesota up choosing number 5. They would anticipate that potentially a quarterback might get taken there, although we don't know. But then at 11, that would mean that the Chargers would probably opt for J.C. Latham out of Alabama.
Yeah.
If they keep the pick and they don't trade with Minnesota, they'd probably take Joe Alt from Notre Dame.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I put Alt there for a while now because it's Jim Harbaugh, man. He's going to want to run the ball, and he's going to want to build the trenches. And as awesome as Marvin Harrison Jr. is, it's hard to really go through his whole coaching history. Stanford, 49ers, obviously Michigan. And where did he have the stud outside receiver? Like, where did he ever have, prioritize that? I don't really think he has, and I think a line is what he's always prioritized. And I love the pick of J.C. Latham for them. I think that makes a lot of sense. A physical, run-blocking right tackle. When you watch him on film, the play strength pops off, just how much he can move the line of scrimmage and run the football off that right side will be a big-time difference-making type of thing for the Chargers with him. But do we have somebody from Minnesota calling in? I don't remember.
We actually don't.
So should we make the pick for the Vikings?
I think we're going to end up making the pick for the Vikings.
So because someone's got to make it, right, for the thought exercise.
We're going to run out of showtime unless you want to stay here till 6 o'clock tonight.
So let's. If you don't,
we're not paying Evan overtime, are we?
Not anymore. If you have any objections, I would say JJ McCarthy here to the Vikings at 5 overall.
At 5?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So. Yeah. All right, so if the Vikings are taking it at 5, then I'm going to plug that in because we want to compare how we're going here.
Yep.
All right, so Evan will take the selection for Minnesota
I made the
5.
pick. I'm Quezzy. I made the pick.
And you're taking McCarthy.
Yep. So we have Caleb, Jayden, Drake, Marvin Harrison Jr., and JJ McCarthy. 4 out of 5 quarterbacks. 5.
And we bumped the Chargers down to 11 in Minnesota's old spot where they'll take J.C. Latham from Alabama.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, I like Latham a lot for them because, like he said, as much as Joe Alt would flip sides and be perfectly fine, they need a right tackle. They have Slater on the left side. That's a stud. So this makes a whole lot of sense to draft a right tackle to play a right tackle, right? Not to try to flip a left tackle.
All right, so that brings us now to pick 6. With the trade, Minnesota select moving up to take JJ McCarthy at 5. Jordan Renan from ESPN.com, who covers the New York Giants, joined us here inside the Playbook. Hey, Jordan, it's John and Evan here in Foxborough. Thanks for the time today, man.
You got it, guys. What's
going on?
Hey, we're just we're in a hurry to get this thing over with, I think. But the second thing is that we realize that there wasn't a whole lot of intrigue really going in, which is kind of making everybody itchy to get this thing going with. But at the same time, we know that the Giants have some specific needs. We're hoping that you can shed a little bit of light on that, and then ultimately make the pick for the Giants at number 6 based on what we have had transpire. And I'll read it to you again quickly. It was Williams, Daniels, Maye, Harrison, and then the Chargers traded out of 5 to Minnesota, and Minnesota selected McCarthy at quarterback at 5. So in that scenario, what do you think the Giants might do at 6?
Not loving that board for the Giants, right? Because now you're taking them out of that quarterback picture, right? The top 4 quarterbacks are now gone already. They clearly did a lot of work on that position. You don't do that if you're not thinking seriously about making a move there. Daniel Jones has 2 neck injuries in the past 3 years, and then in addition to that, he tore his ACL and played pretty poorly last year. So I think they would like to, if the ideal scenario presents itself, namely for Drake Maye, make a move there. But he took that off the board. So sitting back, I think they could still feel pretty good. They feel another need because they need wide receiver really badly. Their last 1,000-yard receiver was Odell Beckham Jr. in 2018. So why not run it back with another LSU guy? Sure, they might be a little bit of a headache at times, but certainly talented. Malik Nabers would fit a huge need for them. Their first number 1 wide receiver since Odell. As a matter of fact, if you go back and look at the help that Daniel Jones has had throughout his career, I'd say the best receiver he's probably ever thrown to, because you can't count Darren Waller last year because he was beat up and he really didn't play that much.
Yeah.
Healthy. Was probably Sterling Shepard.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Kind of makes sense to me, though, right?
Yeah, Jordan, you just mentioned it about quarterback, and I think one of the biggest mysteries of the draft are the Giants a quarterback team or not? And I just wanted to get your take on whether or not you think that they're in the quarterback market.
Well, there's zero doubt. I have zero doubt they're in the quarterback market. They brought in all the top quarterbacks. They did all the visits. They did private workouts with all of them. And there is concern within the Giants building about Daniel Jones' injury history. He has 2. I can't reiterate this more or say it any more clearly to people. He has 2 neck injuries in the past 3 years, right? That is not something you just glance over. And then we can sit here and go back and forth about the quarterback evaluation part of it with him. Like, is he good enough in the first place, right? Do you really want to build your team around him? Are you going to win a championship with him at quarterback? Can he play in a league? Absolutely. Can Daniel Jones be a quality quarterback? Absolutely. But is he one of those guys that you are going to be competing and winning Super Bowls with every year? You probably need an ideal situation around to even be and have that conversation.
Okay, so we've got Malik Nabers then as your pick for the Giants at 6, based on the way that our draft has kind of unfolded here.
Yeah, but can I interest you guys in a,
in a trade
nice package? Yes. In a nice package for number 3? Would it interest you if number 6 came with a first-round pick next year maybe of the Giants? I mean, it's a pretty enticing thing if you offer number 6, right?
It is, and
if they would be content with JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, that's something that I've floated around is, if there's a chance that the Patriots might see this whole thing a little bit differently than other teams do, and they actually have JJ McCarthy ahead of Drake Maye, by going from 3 to 6, you probably still are in a pretty good spot to get JJ McCarthy. And, I don't know if you're a basketball fan, Jordan, but I compared it to the Celtics trading down and taking Jason Tatum in 2017 when everybody else thought Markelle Fultz was the best player in the draft, and Danny Ainge got it right.
I lived in Philly at the time. That was they're going to regret forever.
Yeah, right. So a big Celtics fan, as you can imagine. So that trade, Celtics look great, right? History looks great on the Celtics.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a chance that the Patriots steal from there. But you mentioned Drake Maye for the Giants. He has a relationship with Eli, right? And I was wondering, I'm pretty sure that the Mannings had something to do with Daniel Jones too, right? So that's a connection there that shouldn't be overlooked if Eli is going in there and vouching for Drake Maye.
Yeah, that stamp of approval never hurts. But Daniel Jones was even more than that, because his college coach, David Cutcliffe, down at Duke, was, that was Peyton and Eli's coach in college, right? So, I mean, he super connected to the family, David Cutcliffe. Drake Maye's connection isn't quite as good, but look, getting the stamp of approval from Eli Manning, just like getting the stamp of approval from Tom Brady, chirping in the ear of Robert Kraft for potentially for JJ McCarthy probably doesn't hurt him either, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's very true. Hey, Jordan, thanks for spending some time with us today, man. It's appreciated.
Thanks, Jordan.
You got it, guys. Anytime. Have a good show.
You got it. Jordan Renan, covering the Giants for ESPN.com. Speaking of that, Eli Manning, little plug there, and, the Manning family overall.
Yeah.
You could, if you thought that you might be able to cover the position for, I don't know, a year, probably 2, could wait for Eli and Peyton's nephew at the University of Texas.
Looks pretty good throwing the ball.
Did you see him in the spring game?
It was the spring game.
Did you watch any of it? Did you see any of it?
I saw the highlight. I saw someone posted.
My God, lasers.
Somebody posted every Arch Manning throw from the from the spring practice.
Yeah.
And I watched. So it was like a 12-minute cut up of every single throw. So I watched it really quickly.
It was nasty.
There's no doubt about it that he's got arm talent. Like, there's no doubt about that. We'll see if he's got it between the ears and if he can play the position. I know you must be excited about that.
I think they're actually in pretty good shape at UT for quarterback.
Yeah.
Quinn Ewers this year, and Ewers' name is likely to be thrown about, as high as some of the drafts next year, as these quarterbacks are this year. He'll certainly be one of those. He'll probably be a Heisman contender. He definitely has ability. I worry a little about his accuracy right now because, he's had some elite receivers at Texas. As you know, you love, 2, 3 of them that are in the draft.
I love Jatavian Sanders, too. I love them all.
Jatavian Sanders.
Bring Jonathan Brooks with you, too.
Bring them all.
Yeah.
Take him as a running back. He's coming off an ACL, but Jonathan Brooks, the one that we think is a real sleeper is Jordan Whittington.
Yep.
They had some offensive talent.
Oh yeah.
Which also tells you that if they were actually able to beat Texas, which they did, or at least lose to Washington, I should say, as they did in the national semifinal, what kind of team does Washington really have? I've been a Michael Penix proponent.
Right.
And I know people are looking away from A, his age, B, his injury history, but if you really want to try to win now and you don't have the luxury of one of those top 2 or 3 picks in there, I think Penix is a great choice, and I think he'd be even a great choice if the Patriots traded down if McCarthy's not there to take him at 11.
Yeah, no, I agree with you that I always joke that Texas and Washington, if you just drafted their offenses,
you're in great shape.
You're in pretty good shape going forward, and both those teams are absolutely loaded. But I love the pick of Malik Nabers. I think that Malik Nabers for the Giants is so much like Stephon Diggs was in Buffalo for Brian Daboll, and he can use him in a lot of similar ways. And I was at LSU's Pro Day mainly for Jayden Daniels, but watching the field work for Malik Nabers and watching how smooth he was in the route tree was just incredible.
Sure. All right. Hey, forgot to mention this. Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Bud Light is the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. And whether you're in the game or betting on the game, you'll need a game plan. DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the New England Patriots, provides you with everything you need to build your personal betting game plan so you can get in on all the action while practicing safe bets. Visit DraftKings.com/responsible-gaming to learn more about all the safe betting tools DraftKings has to offer. Hope is here, 800-327-5050 or gamblinghelplinemass.org. Or I should say gamblinghelplinema.org. Must be 21 plus. Play it smart from the start. GameSenseMA.com, physically present in Massachusetts. See DraftKings.com/responsible-gaming for details and state-specific responsible gambling resource. I always want to be one of those guys at the end who has to talk like this real fast, and you don't understand what the hell they're saying at the end of it. I've always wanted to do that, so thank you, Marine, for that opportunity today. Appreciate that. And I
could have put 2 times speed on it for you.
I could have, but I screwed it up anyway. So, hey, that's the way it rolls anyway. We do have sponsors to thank here. All right, so we have taken for our Patriots Playbook mock to bring you up to date. Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, Drake Maye, Marvin Harrison. At 5, the Chargers traded with Minnesota, and they selected J.C. Latham of Alabama at that stage. Because they anticipate picking at 11. At number 5 with the trade, Minnesota then would probably, looks like they'd trade up and take JJ McCarthy. So that's what we had there. So it was actually Minnesota making the pick of the Chargers at 5. Let's be clear about that. Giants then selected Malik Nabers wide receiver from LSU at 6, which brings us to 7. And the Tennessee Titans, making the selection for the Titans in our mock draft, is Teresa Walker, who covers the Titans in the NFL for the Associated Press. Hey, Teresa, it's John and Evan here in Foxborough. How's it going?
Going well, John and Evan, and I'll say this. I can make an incredible argument for 2 positions for the Titans at this spot.
Go.
Considering that they were one of the worst teams protecting their quarterback last year, left tackle Joe Alt sitting there. I grab him. I run to the commissioner to hand in that card. On the other hand, they have a new coach in Brian Callahan who's made it clear he really likes to have guys who can get in the end zone. And while they have Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins, they can use more. We haven't seen enough out of Traylon Burke. Roma Odunze is the person that I would be picking because they have Bill Callahan coaching up what's on that offensive line in a tackle-rich draft.
Okay, so then you will, with the 7 pick, based on the way our draft is run down now, you take Roma Odunze?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. That's good, which means Joe Alt slides down a little bit further.
He's fallen.
I know. We always have one in the first round.
Control-Alt-Delete. He's falling down the board.
You've been waiting to use that.
No, but an emailer, one of our listeners emailed in, and we were doing nicknames. Control-Alt-Delete was his.
That's so unfair.
It's a good one. I like it.
I do like it, though. All right, so tell us a little bit about then the dynamic nature of the Tennessee offense, Teresa, and why you feel like Odunze is the best pick for them at 7.
Well, we have not seen much at all out of Traylon Burks, who was the 18th pick a couple of years ago in that trade with Philadelphia for A.J. Brown. Yep. He has 1 touchdown catch in 2 years. He's had injuries, and, yes, they just brought in Calvin Ridley. They really like him, but he's 29. I know it's a kind of a, he's got a lot of tread on those tires, kind of 29. But DeAndre Hopkins, he is a year older, even though he did have a 1,000-yard receiving season last year. And you've got Brian Callahan, he's made it clear. He's calling in the offense, and he wants to attack. And having seen what he learned under Zach Taylor with the Bengals, more offensive weapons, absolutely necessary. This is a team that has had to lean on guys like Nick Westbrook-Akina way too much in the last couple of years. So you can never have enough depth when it comes to pass-catching threats and to help this offense, which after last year, I didn't think it could get much worse from 22. They found a way to get worse in 23. So they need help because you just can't depend. It's the NFL. Guys get hurt. They need depth at wide receiver.
You could also come to New England, and then you might see it at that level or worse as well, because the Patriots have had some similar issues, right?
Yeah, it's funny because the Titans stole our 2 receivers, DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley, and then we're still talking about how the Titans have receiving issues. Right. It's funny, but you don't think there's any chance that the Titans take a quarterback in this draft, and Will Levis is your guy down there in Tennessee?
No. Remember, the GM, Brand Carthon, is in his 2nd year. He's the guy who traded up to get Will Levis at 33 a year ago. So, no, I don't see them going. No. They added Mason Rudolph as a free agent. They still have Malik Willis from the last GM on this roster. They have got enough areas to fill. They like Will Levis at this point.
Okay.
Yep, makes sense.
Right. Good stuff. All right, so Tennessee takes Rome Odunze, wide receiver, Washington. Hey, Teresa, thanks for taking part in our little game here. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you, John and Evan.
You got it. All right, so there you go. They've got Odunze from Washington, and,
it's a lot of receivers.
That's a lot. You've got now 3 QBs, 4 QBs in the first 5 picks, then Harrison, then Nabers, then Odunze. So you've got 7 offensive players taken in the first 7 picks of our mock draft.
Yeah, look, it makes sense with Bill Callahan, or Brian Callahan. Bill Callahan's his dad. Yep. Brian Callahan coming from the Bengals, where they have Chase Higgins and then Tyler Boyd for a long time in the slot. It makes sense that he would want to build a 3-headed monster down in Tennessee that looks a little bit similar, and I can see where Teresa's going with that. Teresa's more plugged in with the Titans than I am, so I'm not taking her for her word about the quarterback. I'm just shocked that the Titans are so in on Will Levis. maybe they are in on him for a year and see what happens, and then they're a quarterback team in 2025. There's some moxie there. There's no doubt about that. He's got some physical talent and some moxie. But I think that I wouldn't be shocked. And
haven't they kind of had that though as well in Tennessee? I mean, I always, kind of saw, their quarterbacks over the last couple of years really kind of display that more than anything else out on the field.
Yeah, I mean, look,
just from their overall style of play.
Yeah, I just you look at Bill Callahan again. Brian, I keep doing that. Brian Callahan.
Yeah.
He just had Joe Burrow with the Chargers, and you know how good with the Bengals, and you know how good that you have it when you have a guy like that. I'm not saying they're a quarterback team in this draft, but would any of us be surprised if they're a quarterback team in 2025 and Will Levis doesn't play well? And
no, Levis is it's a gamble. I mean, let's face it, it's a gamble. I'm thinking, just based on the personalities that they've had in there, they're looking for guys that can, make those plays, and they want somebody, as you said, with moxie. And I think, we all think of, if you know anything about Will Levis, the guy's got that kind of swag about him, and that's the kind of guy that fits what I would look at as a Tennessee mold, based on what they've done in the past few years.
Absolutely. Southern kid too, right? Kentucky. Like I get it. I look at that team, and I think the right pick is probably would be an offensive lineman. I think a wide receiver like Odunze is a little bit of a cherry on top before you've built the foundation of what they need. But man, that Ridley, Hopkins, and Odunze would be tough to stop. There's no doubt about that.
All right, so if you joined in a little bit late today, with our mock draft for 2024 here, we said at the very beginning of the show that we had the first 9 teams covered in the draft, and then we'll make picks all the way down to 11, which is the conceivable trade spot as well for New England if that happens in the opening round. But we didn't have anybody to select for Atlanta, just because the 2-3 people that we had tried to select were unavailable at this time to make that pick for the Falcons. So we opened up the phone lines, and we asked for someone who had an interest in the Falcons or any knowledge of that, or maybe just, I don't know. But Rodrigo in Florida heard our call, called Marine Matt. Rodrigo in Florida is going to join us to make the pick for the Falcons at number 8. Rodrigo, thanks for doing this, buddy.
What's going on, fellas?
So are you normally also a Falcons fan? Do you follow them at all?
No. I do a little bit of gambling, and I did like to gamble on them last 2 seasons.
Okay.
I like that.
No, I'm a Patriots fan.
Okay, all right. Well, why else would you be listening to the Patriots?
Do you know who also likes gambling on the Falcons?
Who?
Calvin Ridley.
Every now and then you get some value.
Badoon. I'll give him that one. We don't have to wait for the actual drum riff on that one. Yeah, I know. It's exactly. All right. So, Rodrigo, tell us what you think based on Williams, Daniels, Maye, Harrison, followed by McCarthy, Nabers, and Odunze being taken in our mock draft at number 8. Who do you think that the Atlanta Falcons might pick?
So I was really torn coming up to the pick. I was really looking at defense. Obviously, a guy like Dallas Turner, maybe Jared Verse. I know Evan doesn't really like Jared Verse. Then there's a guy that's been really rumored to be one of the first defensive players taken. His name is Byron Murphy.
That's my boy right there.
Yeah, you know all about Byron Murphy.
Unfolded, I was kind of expecting, since McCarthy went 5, it kind of drops some of the wide receivers. I was thinking maybe the Titans go alt, and then I ended up with Odunze, which would be awesome. To pair up with London and Pitts and Bijan Robinson and help out Kirk Cousins that has only really ever had like 1 or 2 really high-end wide receivers in his whole time in Minnesota. But, I mean, I got a gift here in Joe Alt. You got Jake Matthews, who's, I think, 30, 31. He's getting older, and, you get your next tackle for the next 10, 15 years. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer here. You take Joe Alt, or if maybe of a team that is willing to trade up for Joe Alt and maybe make a trade. But I think the pick at this point, with how the way the board is falling, you got to take Joe Alt here.
What do you think, Ev?
Yeah, I would have. Normally, when we did this exercise, I probably would have agreed with you, Rodrigo, and I would have taken Dallas Turner with this pick, assuming Joe Alt wasn't on the board. But I loved your point about Jake Matthews. I can't believe Jake Matthews is still playing. Like he played in
forever.
He played in Super Bowl 51, in 28-3, and I was like, Jake Matthews is still playing. Jeez. Yeah. So he's 32 years old. I just looked it up, and he's getting up there. And Alt's not the type of guy that you necessarily want to sit for a year. He's too talented for that. So that's a little bit of a thing. But Caleb McGarry is their right tackle. He's a pretty good right tackle. He'll stay over there. Maybe Jake Matthews becomes somebody they trade or, dangle out there in a trade for another pick on day 2 or something like that, or early day 3. Whatever the case may be, I think you have to take the talent here, right? Like you just have to run up with the talent overall, and taking a guy like Alt, who's a franchise tackle, top 10 talent in this draft, no doubt, I think is the right move.
Yeah. Then if this breaks out like that, then that would keep him a top 10 talent.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What do you think, Rodrigo?
I think it's like what Fred Kirsch always says. I listen to lots of Patriots Unfiltered. He's you got one of these top 10 picks. If a blue chip player like this falls to you, you gotta. I think this may be the last blue chip player in this mock draft. If we really think about it, and it's just like, you're the Falcons, you get a gift. I mean, as a Patriots fan, if I really had to pick for the Falcons and they just randomly called me and said, hey, who do you think? I'll just give them a punter. But you got to take Joe Alt here.
The funny thing about it is that last year when Gonzo fell all the way to the Patriots, that was also sort of a, hey, you got to take the talent kind of pick, wasn't it?
No, I think it was more or less like, it was a need.
Well, it was definitely a need. Definitely a need, but we've already identified that Alt would certainly still fulfill a need, I think, for Atlanta in this case, right?
I think Washington kind of screwed up, and the Patriots probably would have pivoted and maybe taken a guy like there was somebody else available. It doesn't come to mind, but they took Emmanuel Forbes, and it was just kind of like it's like in this case, it's like a no-brainer. But at the same time, I highly doubt that he wasn't their top player on the board, and I think they just got him.
Okay. All right. Well, you did a good job with your homework, so I thank you for that. So
the last 10 minutes I've been looking because you guys, the whole draft is falling weird. So I was like, oh, man, I think Odunze or Alt is going to fall to me.
Yeah, and as it turns out, Alt did fall to you. That's exactly
Control,
right.
Alt, Delete.
And thank you right. Thank you for calling us weird. I appreciate that. That's good because we didn't want a boring mock draft.
Yeah, it's true.
Nope, nobody wants to be boring. Nobody wants to be mundane. And the better part of this is that if this, first 10 picks of the draft turn out like this, I'm going to be bragging like hell. You know that, right?
Well, I honestly, I don't think it's that much of a boring draft because we got a trade with the Chargers. They moved down. You know what I'm saying? Then JJ McCarthy got picked, so now you got teams kind of sort of scrambling, thinking like the Giants maybe they were like, hey, McCarthy could fall to us, and he didn't.
Yep.
So now you kind of have to pivot a little bit if you're any of the teams in the top 10. I mean, and you look at like me, I'm the Falcons. I'm ecstatic. Because now I got my pick of the litter of one of Odunze or Alt.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this mock draft's been pretty exciting. I was excited. I was hoping I didn't have to pick a defensive player because I'm like, man, this draft is not the draft to take a defensive player.
Doesn't sound like it, does it?
No.
Nope. Doesn't look like it right now. That's for darn sure. Hey, Rodrigo, thank you for doing this and smart picking. Way to go.
Thanks, Rodrigo.
Of course,
good
man.
pick.
I appreciate you guys.
You got it. So there you go. Rodrigo in Florida. Should have asked him where he was in Florida. And then making the pick for the Atlanta Falcons at number 8 took Joe Alt, offensive tackle, Notre Dame.
So if I'm the Patriots and Atlanta takes Joe Alt at 8 and I'm Elliott Wolf, I'm getting on the horn and I'm saying, what do you want for Jake Matthews? Because we'll send you a pick for a ready-made left tackle for a year or two.
I was just going to ask you that. If Jake Matthews becomes expendable, are the Patriots buyers?
100%. Yeah, that's exactly the type of player I think, if you're taking the quarterback at 3, maybe you want to take that receiver with the top of the second round pick that you have. And now you can take that developmental tackle in the third round that might need a year or two to sit behind a guy like Jake Matthews. And you have Chuck Sikorafor that now he's more like the swing tackle instead of a starter. And that's sort of the move I've been hoping the Patriots would be able to make. Not too dissimilar from when they had Trent Brown in here in 2018, right? When they got him, gave Isaiah Wynn some time. Obviously, Wynn didn't work out anyways, but at least it was the right idea in practice to handicap Isaiah Wynn a little bit. So, yeah, I like the pick, though, for Atlanta. I think the biggest thing, he was mentioning Rome Odunze, and such a talented player, and he's going to be a great pro. But if you're the Falcons, you've picked Drake London, you've picked Bijan Robinson, you've picked Kyle Pitts. At some point, you got to pick some defensive players. Like you can't.
Well, that was where I was going next because in all honesty, right now we've had the first 8 picks of our mock, all offensive players.
No doubt.
Who is most likely to be the first defensive player selected in your estimation, and where does he get taken?
Yeah, I like the Byron Murphy shout because I think that he's starting to get some buzz, certainly as that interior penetrator, and we see across the league now how valuable that is just based off the contracts that some of these guys have gotten at that defensive tackle position. And I'm sure Christian Barmore is going to be not too far behind. So I understand why he went Murphy. I still think Dallas Turner is the best defensive player in the draft. I just think the upside there is pretty high. He's not Will Anderson. He's not as ready and as polished, and he's not as good against the run as Will Anderson is. The comp that I've used for him is like a Brian Burns type, more of that screamer off the edge and a great athlete and change of direction skill and things like that. So I would say that Dallas Turner is probably the best player defensively in the draft. And the one thing I would just disagree a little bit with Rodrigo on blue chip players. I still think there's one blue chip player left in this draft.
Okay.
And he plays offense still.
Okay. So no defensive blue chippers.
I don't think so.
No.
I think Dallas Turner is a very, very good player. And I don't hate Jared Verse. I just think that skill set of your foundational rush move is your power, is your bull rush. I think what you see a lot of the time in the NFL, the play strength of these tackles is so much better than it is in the ACC. Yeah. That's your number one move is the power, speed to power, bull rush, long arm, whatever.
That's why I like Byron Murphy.
It's tough to that doesn't always necessarily translate right away, and you need to have more in your bag. Yeah. You need to have more moves. I'll give you an example. Tyree Wilson with the Vegas Raiders. When you turned his film on in college for Tyree Wilson, he was a man amongst boys. He was throwing guys off of him and, just like a Hulk playing football in college. He gets to the pros. Now all of a sudden you're not the strongest guy on the field, or maybe you are, but the gap isn't as wide between you and the blockers in front of you, and you have to learn how to play with a little bit more of your off-speed pitch. And that's what I would worry about a little bit with Jared Verse.
Doing a little spring cleaning, Bob's Discount Furniture can help. Shop storage-packed styles like super comfy sectionals with built-in storage, party-ready dining cabinets, and storage seating, and best-selling beds with built-in drawers, all at Bob's everyday low prices. Spring into the new season at your nearest Bob's Discount Furniture, the official furniture store of the New England Patriots. All right, we roll along here, getting down to our last couple of picks of our top 10 in our 2024 mock draft. At number 9 comes up the New York Jets. Rich Cimini from ESPN.com, who is
9 is the Bears again.
Yeah, who?
We're on 9. We're at the Bears.
We're at the Bears.
We are.
Did we mess that up? Did I mess that up? They down to. Oh, that's right. They're at 10. They're at 10. So the Bears are at 9 again.
Yeah, we need to pick for the Bears again.
We need to pick for the Bears, and then. Yeah, and then that's right. No, it's right here in front of me. I got it. Round 10, first round, one pick for the Jets at 10th overall. I'm like, okay, 9th was the Bears, and I'm like, okay, left that out. So you want to make the pick for the Bears here at number 9?
I think that the other blue chip player that I was mentioning that I still think is in this draft is Brock Bowers, who I think is just outstanding. So I would. Just looking at the Bears right now, they picked Darnell Wright last year at left tackle. They have Braxton Jones at left tackle. Still a younger player. Yep. I think there's a chance that Olu Fashanu is the pick here for the Bears, the way this board broke down, and you get that left tackle. But you did just take Caleb Williams. Yep. The receiving core outside of DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, you have two good receivers there. I think Brock Bowers, I know they have Cole Kmet, but it's a different type of tight end. Cole Kmet's a big body, inline guy.
So
I'm gonna go Fashanu. I love Bowers. I do love Bowers, but I think that they have enough of an arsenal there with that Keenan Allen trade that I don't necessarily think they need to go offensive skill player here in Chicago. So I'll give them Olu Fashanu, and now they got both a left and a right tackle to build around moving forward.
Okay, Olu Fashanu is the selection by Mr. Evan Lazar for the Chicago Bears at number 9 overall in the first round, which now brings us to the 10th overall pick in the first round, and the New York Jets. And Rich Domini, who's been a contributor inside the Patriots Playbook during the regular season, kind enough to spend a couple of minutes with us here today for the Jets pick at number 10. Hey, Rich, it's John and Evan here in Foxborough. How's it going?
Good. How you guys doing today?
Good.
Good, thanks.
Almost moved you guys up to the 9 spot, but, nevertheless.
Maybe they will end up in the 9th spot. You never know.
Well, these things do happen, as we're aware. What do you think is most likely going to happen for the Jets if they stay at 10? Or, let me add a little codicil here, if the draft breaks out like we have discussed it here for our purposes, and I'll briefly recap, it's Williams, Daniels, Maye, Harrison, McCarthy in a trade with Minnesota there at 5, and then Nabers, Odunze,
Fashanu.
Fashanu, I mean, not Fanu. Fashanu.
That's a tough name. I get
it. It is, yeah. So
yeah,
what do you think?
So I do think the Jets would love to get one of those top 3 receivers. So obviously those guys are gone there. I think they would love to get an offensive tackle, but I think 2 of their top guys are gone there with Joe Alt and Olu Fashanu. So I think they would probably go Bowers in this spot here. I know that's a very popular pick for them in mock drafts across the country. And to me, it's an Aaron Rodgers related decision. Like, what does he need more, a playmaker or more protection on the offensive line? And so this is a really close call. I do think it could be easily an offensive tackle here, either a Tali Fuaga, who I know Joe Douglas likes a lot, or perhaps even J.C. Latham at that spot. But I think that's a conversation the Jets are going to have because they could go either way. But if they stay at 10, I think the playmaking ability of Bowers intrigues them.
Okay, so you'll take Bowers with the 10 pick for the New York Jets?
Like it.
Okay.
I like it too much, though. It makes me worried.
Yeah, a little bit. Well, but that's the thing. We know that, as long as his Achilles is right, and he can, last past the first couple of snaps of the season, that Aaron Rodgers needs to have the talent around him in order to be the effective quarterback that the Jets hoped he would be this time a year ago. So you want to try to surround him with some weapons still, correct?
Yeah, they really only have one legitimate weapon on the perimeter right now, and that's Garrett Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
They did sign Mike Williams. He's coming off ACL surgery. I don't think he's going to be ready until the very end of August or beginning of September, so he probably won't have a preseason. And, with his injury history, it's a little iffy, so they definitely could use another weapon on the outside or in Bauer's case, more on the inside. But so it's just a fascinating decision. I think if it were up to me, if I were in the GM chair, I would take an offensive tackle. I just feel that given the Jets have 2 33-year-old tackles right now in Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses. Tyron Smith has not played a full season since 2015. The Jets are the unluckiest team in the league when it comes to offensive line injuries. They just go through them like it's like an assembly line. They go through them. And so I think having another offensive lineman would be the better call, but I am not in the GM chair, and I do think there's some sentiment for Bowers.
Yeah, so, and I'm wondering if that sentiment might also be, shared similarly by others that are going to make these picks, only because, the Jets don't pick again until the 3rd round. So how much pressure is there to make sure that you've got, as you've already suggested, a little extra talent for someone to go get the ball from Rodgers?
Well, one thing I can say, and this is not like breaking news or anything, like the Jets are just their butts are on the hot seat this year. I mean, the GM, the head coach, if they don't make the playoffs this year, they're probably both gone. So everything they've done this offseason is to win now. That's why they've brought in older guys like Myron Smith and Hassan Reddick and Mike Williams, Morgan Moses. All these guys are older guys on short-term deals. It's all about now. So if you apply that thinking to this draft pick, you would take Bowers because he could come in and make more of an immediate impact than, say, an offensive tackle who might not play right away.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that if it were up to me, I think there's more positional value at tackle. I mean, very few tight ends in the first round really pan out. But they think Bowers is something special. Joe Douglas calls him a Swiss Army knife. He can play in the slot. He can split out wide. He can do different things. And so I think that really intrigued. Hey, look, in the end, they might go to Rodgers and say, what would you like? You know, so it might be his call.
So Aaron Rodgers is the GM, which is what we all thought.
Well,
anyways.
yeah, I mean, that's certainly been part of the discussion. And frankly, if I'm looking at it from a Jets fan point of view, why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah, that's fair. And Rich, go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, when you got a quarterback who's going to the Hall of Fame and knows what he wants, it's like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers certainly solicited input from Tom Brady when he got there. Like, why wouldn't you? The guy knows more than probably anybody in the building. So, yeah, I would definitely solicit input from an Aaron Rodgers.
All right,
Rich, you mentioned the hot seat for the brain trust down there in New York. And I just think it's kind of fascinating that, they drafted Zach Wilson and they're still around. That doesn't happen a lot, right? Where GMs get multiple chances and coaches get multiple chances. So you really feel that if the Jets are not a playoff team, that there's a very good chance that this could finally be it for this Douglas Saleh regime.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, last year they would have been gone this year had it not been for the Rodgers injury. But of course, he infamously gets hurt on the fourth snap of the year. And I think the owner was put in a really tough position. He's like, well, Aaron really liked the GM and the coach and the offensive coordinator, Nate Hackett. And if I fire all these guys, what does that do to Aaron's state of mind? What does that do to his ability to succeed? Rodgers swears by Nate Hackett. He might be the only person in New York and New Jersey who feels that way, but he swears by Nate Hackett. And so the owner said, okay, I'm going to run it back with all these people and give it one more chance. And if it doesn't work, then I'm going to make some changes. So you're right. Somehow they survived the Zach Wilson debacle. In my opinion, it's the worst draft pick in Jets history. And that's saying something. But, they got the mulligan because they went out and signed Aaron Rodgers, and I think the owner is like, well, let's see this through before I make any rash decisions.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Hey, Rich, thank you. Appreciate the time today, as always, my friend.
Thanks, Rich.
All right. Take care, guys.
You got it. Rich Cimini, who covers the Jets for ESPN.com, joining us here as he does during the regular season, as we usually have him on twice a year to talk Jets week when they come in. So that brings us to pick 11, which is where we were going to end the draft, just because, the time factor was going to bring us to the end of the show pretty much anyway. But number two, because, and largely this is where, the Vikings at 11 currently came into play because they were most mentioned as a potential trade partner for the Patriots if the Patriots were going to get that bag that Gerard Mayo has talked about.
Well, they got those double ones, and those are attractive for these teams that have multiple holes to fill like the Patriots do. And, I mentioned that Bowers I thought was the other blue chip player in this draft. I don't fear the Jets normally because, as Rich said, they're kind of the Jets, and usually something happens to derail their season. Yeah. But Brock Bowers to the Jets would scare me. Like, that is one thing that would scare me because I don't think that they have truly had the other shoe to Garrett Wilson, right? Like, it's just been kind of Garrett Wilson and a bad quarterback, and now you have potentially an MVP in Aaron Rodgers with Bowers and Wilson to distribute the ball to. I think Bowers is a unique tight end prospect that might debunk some of the tight ends, like he mentioned, a TJ Hawkinson doesn't pan out. Those types of guys, OJ Howard, they're prototypical Y inline tight end, whereas I think Bowers is a receiver. Like, Bowers is a playmaker.
By the way, so is Jatavian Sanders. I don't know if you mentioned him earlier. Sanders is a receiver.
Yeah,
he
guys
can block a little bit, but he's a receiver first.
Bowers is a slot receiver. That's what he is. He's just a slot receiver in a tight end frame.
Mm-hmm.
And he can block. Like, he's not Rob Gronkowski, but he can block. He's not a zero as a blocker. I just think that his impact in the passing game is more so than what you would get with a Hawkinson, with a O.J. Howard, with some of these other guys. So I think it's a little different. You got to look at him as a weapon, as a pass catcher, not just as a tight end.
Well, for the purposes of this Patriots Playbook mock, we'll run it down for you again briefly here. Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, Drake Maye to the Patriots at 3, then Marvin Harrison at 4 to Arizona. At 5, we had a trade down by the Chargers with Minnesota at 11, and then the trade down for the Chargers, if they move to 11, they would select J.C. Latham, the offensive lineman from Alabama. If that puts Minnesota in at number 5, likely JJ McCarthy. More on that in a moment. Then at 6, New York Giants selecting Malik Nabers, wide receiver LSU. Number 7, Tennessee Titans selecting Rome Odunze, wide receiver Washington. At number 8, Atlanta selecting Joe Alt, offensive tackle Notre Dame. At 9, Chicago, Olu Fashanu, offensive tackle Penn State. And then at 10, Jets, Brock Bowers, tight end, Georgia. So for 11, if we're going by our draft, that means now that the Los Angeles Chargers are making the selection at number 11 in place of Minnesota. We actually had a volunteer to make that pick at 11, but I don't know if he wants to make the pick for the Chargers or if he wants to do something with Minnesota, because that's Minnesota holds it right now. In our draft, it's already gone. So our good buddy Eldred in North Carolina wants to make a pick at 11. What's up, Eldred?
What's up, Eldred?
Hey, how you doing, Mr. Legend? What's up, Mr. Evans?
How we doing?
I'm not doing too good, but
what's wrong?
But you know what?
What's wrong? What's wrong?
Okay, Evan.
Yes, sir.
Drake Maye is his front door to my front door is 15 minutes.
I like that.
Apart. And if we pick him, I'm gonna cry like a baby.
Happy tears, right? Happy tears.
Happy tears, though, right?
Happy tears.
Happy tears.
No. but cause Evan know where I stand on this, but I'm gonna leave it at that.
Yeah, I know.
But if Minnesota keeps their pick at 11,
okay,
I know where he's going, and I know.
All right,
go ahead.
I'm going to Penix.
I knew it.
I'm going to Penix.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine him with JJ and Addison?
Be
more and at 23, they pick a running back like Jonathan Brooks.
Mm-hmm. I don't know that Jonathan Brooks coming off a knee injury is going to be worth the pick any higher than somewhere maybe in the second round. But
yeah, this is not a running back class.
No, not really. Not really.
No,
all right,
really
so
I was just switch off Brooks.
So if they actually I like listen, if they don't trade and they stay at 11, I like the Penix pick.
Well,
the
way the draft board's gone, it's either him or Bo Nix, right? And I know there's been some rumors about them liking Bo Nix a little bit, not as much about Penix, but look, I get it, Eldred. I get why you like Penix. If it wasn't coming with all the baggage that he has with his injury history.
Oh, you talking about the injury? He was, like I said, he was for 2 years.
He was healthy for 2 years. I think the biggest thing with the injury history that scares me with Penix is that he tore his right ACL twice. Mm-hmm. The same knee has been blown out twice. So every time you tear your ACL, your threat of re-injury goes up a little bit. And now he re-injured it again. So now we're talking about it being another issue potentially again. I've less the shoulders, okay, so he has an AC joint and
everything is good for medical.
Yeah.
But then again, so was Joe Burrow. But Joe came back in. What did he do the second year?
Yeah. No, if you're just talking about pure passer and you're just watching the film and grading these guys off of who had the best film in their draft year, last fall, I would say Jayden probably had the best film, but Penix is definitely number 2.
Okay, can I scare you with something, Evan?
Yes.
DJ 3.0 mark.
Yes.
If you think Brock Bowers scare you for the Jets, they got the Jets moving up to 4, taking Marvin Harrison. Can you imagine him with Williams?
Yeah, that would also scare me. I think anything with the Jets and Rich, I thought summed it up perfectly. They're pushing the chips all in the middle of the table because their regime has no choice. They had to make the playoffs. So the Jets, I think, they're gonna draft an impact player with that pick. I don't think it's gonna be a tackle, even though they need tackles, because tackles, it's not moving the needle enough for the casuals, right? Like, maybe
they're moving up. They're moving up from 10 to 4 with Arizona to get Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense.
Well, if they did that, that would be dynamic. Yes, it would be.
That goes with everything that their offseason's been about, where all of our chips are on the middle for 2024. It's all about Super Bowl playoff or bust in 2024, and nothing else matters. And that trading picks a haul to go up to 4 and taking Harrison would be that.
Hey, Eldred, let me ask you something though, Eldred. If for our mock here, that means that the Chargers would go down to 11. All right, can you make the pick for the Chargers at 11?
Sure, Brian Thomas from LSU.
Okay,
he's a wide receiver.
Yeah. What do you think, Ev?
Yeah, I agree with that pick. Actually, when we did this. Our mock draft exercise, I wanted to be a little different. So when we went at 10 to the Jets, I actually gave Brian Thomas Jr. to the Jets at 10. I think that makes a lot of sense for them, for the Chargers as well. You have this big arm quarterback in Joe Burrow. Justin Herbert.
Mm-hmm.
Might as well give him a 6'2", 6'3" guy that runs a 4.3, right, to go throw the ball to down the field. So yeah, it makes a ton of sense to pair those two guys together.
All right, so then with the Chargers then at number 11, since Minnesota in our draft took McCarthy at 5, Brian Thomas, wide receiver, LSU.
He's really good. He's really good. He's not as smooth as Malik Nabers, but he's bigger and more physical.
Yeah, he's big and physical. Yeah.
Yep.
We did not.
A little bit of his game too.
We did not have a single defensive player taken in the top 11.
I think that there's a stat out there that the most consistent, I think it's 8 offensive players in a row is the record, or maybe it's 8 defensive. It's one side of the ball. It's 8.
This then would set a record. If
I think it's very much in play that the record is set.
Yeah, for this year.
Yeah, 100%. There's 9 blue chip prospects, and I don't include JJ, but you have the 3 quarterbacks, you have the 3 receivers, you have the 2 tackles, and you have Bowers, right? And I think that's the 9. If those guys go 1 through 9, or if JJ jumps in there and that's the 9, it's not surprising.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
My question is this:
Go,
Evan and Mr. Legend. How would you feel if we did draft JJ? I'm just gonna throw a fit. I'm gonna tell you that now.
All right. So let's get to the point then. All right. So you hate Drake Maye. You would have a fit if it's JJ McCarthy. Who should the Patriots, in your estimation, should they take?
Estimation.
Huh?
He's a smart
guy.
At
3,
yeah.
Steam.
I'm sticking with Penny, but you ain't gonna take him at 3. But you ain't gonna get him at
So you don't love him, because if you loved him, you'd take him at 3.
I was just gonna ask that. If you loved him, you'd take Penix at 3.
I would, but see, they not.
Hey, by the way, if he didn't have the medical issues, I would take Penix at 3.
I think that he would definitely be more in the conversation.
Either 12 and 16.
Say that again.
Either
12 to 16.
Seattle,
okay. Yeah.
Either Seattle
Yeah.
or the Raiders going to jump up and get him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right.
Raiders need a quarterback too.
Okay.
And Seattle, his offense coordinator's there now.
But knowing everything that we know, okay, that Penix has, the history with the injuries and everything like that, okay? Who the hell would you take at 3, Eldred?
Who I take at 3? Okay, I'm like Mr. Legend. I'm like you.
You take Harrison?
Marvin Harrison at 3.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then try to move up and get Penix between 13 and 14.
Okay.
All right.
If Seattle don't get him.
Okay.
That's what I would do.
He's a receiver guy. Eldred, you're a receiver guy. I respect that.
Yeah, he is.
I'm a sucker for the receivers too.
Yeah, I know. That's right. That's why I like the fact you like the Texas guys.
Yeah, love the Texas guys. Yeah, both of them.
Yeah, I like Texas too. And if there's a way, let's say we get Maye, I will hope they move up and get A.D. Mitchell because everybody else will be gone.
Yeah,
I would agree with that. I would.
Get A.D. Mitchell.
I don't know. I still think Mitchell goes before Worthy. Don't you think?
According to the Chiefs, everybody's got him going 32 to the Chiefs.
Look, I think Mitchell right now. I think A.D. Mitchell is more pro-ready than Worthy, and that's not to mean Worthy ran a 4.2. I know, I get that, and he's as quick as I've ever seen at that position for sure. But I just, based on what I saw last season, Mitchell's got the ability to go up and get the ball, and I think that's really what you want for a primary top receiver, don't you?
Yeah, I think that you listen to what Elliot Wolf had to say too about the Patriots receiving core last week. He was asked, do you guys feel like you have an X on the roster, an X receiver? We're talking about the position. Yeah. Do you feel like you have that? And he said, we have some guys that we feel like can line up at the X, but do we have the guy that isolated in the 3-by-1 on the one receiver side, and he's facing press man against the best corner on the other team, and he's going to get open consistently off the line of scrimmage? No. And to me, when you use that description of do we have the backside receiver that can beat coverage one-on-one all game long, that's A.D. Mitchell. That's not Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy is Jalen Waddle. He's the guy that you're going to move inside, outside, and use that speed all over the field. A.D. Mitchell, to me, is really who I've compared him to is Michael Pittman on the Colts. He's that prototypical size, speed, X receiver. And I think that's what the Patriots need the most. I understand that some people are in this thought of, let's just get the best player. Let's not worry about position. Let's just get the best receiver possible. But you have to think about the roster construction and how it all fits together. They have Kendrick Bourne. They have Pop Douglas. Those are their two receivers on the roster right now that can play. And now all of a sudden you want to add another slot guy. Now who's playing?
Yeah.
You at least have two receivers in Bourne and Pop Douglas who can play the position at the NFL level, and I think KJ Osborne's another one that they signed from Minnesota who's also more of like an inside guy. So at some point you got to add some outside talent.
Right. Gotcha.
Well, I've been saying that for 15 years, Evan.
Well, it's not surprising to me it's not surprising to me that you're a Brian Thomas Jr. guy, Eldred, because my comp for Brian Thomas Jr. has been a skinny DK Metcalf. Like, he's not as thick and rocked up as DK Metcalf is, but he's a bigger guy with 4.3 speed. His ability, he ran a 4.3 at like 215 pounds. It's not quite DK. It's not 230, 4.3. But that's, and when you start adjusting for weight and size and things like that, that's a very, very, very fast time for a guy that big. Yep. So I see similarities with those guys.
Well, if they listen to me in 2019, because that's who I was banging the table for.
I know.
Brady had 2 more Super Bowls than Brady walked out.
Yeah, well.
There you go.
That's possible. Nope. That's possible. Eldred, always good to talk to you, my man. Thank you for listening, and thanks for contributing today.
Thanks, Eldred.
Sure. No problem. Thanks, Evan. See you at draft time.
All right, buddy. Sir. You got it. The one and only Eldred from North Carolina. All right, so let's recap once again for those that might have tuned in late. And this will be fun to play back, in podcast form following the draft just to see how close we got.
All this has a lot of shelf life, these shows that we've done this week.
I realize that. There's zero shelf life. But if you want to laugh just to see, how, close we get and how close we don't get, here you go. All right, number 1 pick, Chicago, Caleb Williams, quarterback USC. With number 2, Washington selected Jayden Daniels, quarterback LSU. Number 3, the Patriots selected Drake Maye, quarterback North Carolina. Number 4, the Cardinals selected wide receiver Marvin Harrison, Ohio State. Number 5, the Los Angeles Chargers traded with the Minnesota Vikings and swapped picks 5 and 11. So Minnesota, moving up to number 5, selects JJ McCarthy, quarterback Michigan. There you go. Number 6, New York Giants selecting Malik Nabers, wide receiver LSU. Number 7, Tennessee Titans select Odunze, wide receiver, Washington. A little bit of a theme here going on, I think. Number 8, Atlanta, selecting Joe Alt, offensive tackle, Notre Dame. Number 9, Chicago Bears, taking Olu Fashanu, offensive tackle, Penn State. Number 10, the New York Jets, selecting tight end Brock Bowers, Georgia. And number 11, receiving from Minnesota, would be the L.A. Chargers. And the Chargers' pick at 11 was J.C. Latham, offensive lineman, Alabama.
Or Brian Thomas Jr. if you're Eldred.
Brian Thomas Jr.
He
for
hates
Eldred.
linemen.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Or if he's Minnesota, well, was the pick, then he'd take Michael Penix. But, that's neither here nor there. For our purposes, J.C. Latham taken 11 from Alabama by the Los Angeles Chargers.
I get the Chargers' needs at wide receiver. They definitely need receivers after Mike Williams and Keenan Allen were gone. Does Jim Harbaugh strike you as a guy to take a receiver with that high of a draft pick?
No,
me neither.
Until we see it.
He's a tackle guy.
Yeah, tackle, run game. That's just the way he played. That's why JJ McCarthy had a game this year when he threw, 3 passes or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
He likes to run the ball. And he had a guy that he run it with.
Yeah, this is is Blake Corum to the Chargers like the worst kept secret in the league?
Probably.
I think Blake Corum's got to be a Charger.
Yeah, but when does he go?
Day 2. Probably late.
Day 2 guy?
I'd say probably 3rd round.
What makes him, what puts him behind, say, a guy like Brooks, who gets named a lot right now as the top potential running back in the draft, and Brooks is coming off a dadgum ACL?
Yeah, I would say injury obviously is the biggest one for me, but I also think that Corum is shiftier and runs with
different style of guy.
Yeah, lower center of gravity. I think the one thing about Brooks that I liked Brooks, I thought that he was somebody that certainly could be an RB1 in a committee. He's not my workhorse, I don't think, but I think he's probably someone that, could be the top guy with a couple of other guys behind him that could spell him and things like that. Maybe play in the pass, got a different passing game back, think something like that. But I think the biggest thing with Brooks to me is that he does run a little upright to me, where in order to really be truly elusive, he's got to get up to top speed first. Like, he's not one of those guys that linebacker shoots the gap in the backfield and he's going to dance out of the tackle and then keep going up the field. I think that's more Blake Corum. He's got that ability, and that's big to me. Like, can you avoid early penetrators in the line of scrimmage? Can you find, knife gap to gap, jump gap to gap, to get it, okay, your point of attack is supposed to be the B gap. Well, what happens if, Devon Godshaw's in the B gap? What are you going to, you got to run someplace else, right? And I think that with Brooks, really good elusiveness or contact balance at the 2nd and 3rd level, not so much necessarily at the line of scrimmage, which I think is big in the league.
All right. So, actually, if Brooks is taken as the first running back in the NFL, all right, it's 2 straight years that Texas has had the first running back taken in the NFL with Bijan Robinson.
A little bit of a different round for those 2 guys.
I think probably so, but at the same time, I'm just kind of like, so you're talking Texas talent at running back, Texas wide receivers, which we've already made mention of here. When is Steve Sarkisian going to win the damn thing?
I love Steve Sarkisian.
I know you do.
Him and Kyle Shanahan are on my Mount Rushmore. Like, it's not even the other 2 faces don't matter. It's just those 2.
I'm going to pull my Dennis Green here. If you want to crown his ass, let's crown his ass.
Yep, that's it. Those 2 guys.
I'm not ready to do that.
Who have won a lick.
I want him to win a crown first.
Who have won nothing, by the way, as head coaches. They both, for the record, both of them just great play callers.
Very quickly, Bart from Poland sent an email. Okay.
Uh-oh.
Good afternoon. Great to have you back. Put me in the Drake May camp. If he's there, you take him. Unless you get a haul, and I mean a haul. If he's not there, then find a trade partner and target a wide receiver and tackle. Alternatively, JJ McCarthy. Not on the Penix train. I don't see Daniels succeeding in New England.
Yeah, I think with Daniels, and I would not be mad if they took Jayden Daniels at all. Like,
no,
if the Commanders take
no.
JJ, like who was that?
Nope.
One of our callers, one of our participants told us.
Right.
Then fine. They, with Jayden Daniels, I think the 2 things that you worry about a little bit with him are whipping the ball in cold weather in inclement conditions. Doesn't have the biggest of arms. That's why I love Drake May for the Patriots, partially too. December, January, you're not going to worry about arm talent, right? And it's not just playing here. You also have to play in Buffalo, and you have to play in New York. Like, there's other cold weather teams that you play every single year. When we have another wind tsunami in Buffalo that they're playing in, which happens every couple of years when you play the Bills, are you going to have to hand the ball off 40 times because your quarterback can't throw the ball in the conditions?
Right.
I don't want to have to worry about that anymore. I want to have the guy that's got the howitzer that's going to be able to cut it through the wind. That does concern me a little bit with Jayden Daniels. But overall, you can build an offense around Jayden Daniels.
Sure you can. Totally agree. Ev, I appreciate your sticking to the whole doggone thing today, man.
Anytime.
Okay, you got
Anytime. This is my time of year. You know that.
I understand that, and it's fun to talk about. You know, it's fun to pretend. It's fun to look forward. It's fun to be wrong. It's the only time that you're really happy to be wrong.
And we're wrong.
Well, we all are. We all are. But everybody that ventures out and does this mock draft situation, it's an imperfect science.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, it's imperfect with passion. And if you've got passion behind it, then how can you really go wrong in the long run?
Yeah, I love draft season. I think a lot of people misunderstand draft season when it comes to mock drafts and stuff like that. It's just fun. Like
it is.
It's just
totally
fun.
Yeah.
It's great thought exercise. It's a great way, for me personally, it's a great way to talk about the players that they might draft. Am I going to hit 100% of the time? Am I going to hit 25% of the time? No. But at least I can sit here and say, we talked about these guys.
Sure, we did. We did, and that's the best part of it.
Yeah.
And that's where we're always going to be right. We did talk about these guys. Patriots fans, if you want to see Toyota's best offers, including those not seen on TV, go to buyatoyota.com. It's Toyota's official website for deals from the official vehicle of the New England Patriots, Toyota. Let's go places. Mike, sincere thanks to Evan Lazar for sticking with us and participating in our Patriots Playbook mock draft. Our thanks also to Hub Arkush, Pro Football Weekly, Ben Standing, The Athletic, Nicole Yang from the Boston Globe, Darren Urban from ArizonaCardinals.com, Jeff Miller from the LA Times, Jordan Renan from ESPN.com, Teresa Walker from the Associated Press in Nashville, Tennessee, and Rich Cimini, ESPN.com as well, and Rodrigo in Florida, pinch hitting in for the Atlanta Falcons. I'm John Rook. Our next playbook, we go monthly during the off season now. So our next playbook, Marine, when do we day? Thank you. It will be May 29th, okay? So mark that down on your calendars. May 20th. Shoot, we'll probably have OTAs and stuff like that to talk about that by then, right? Okay. So May 29th, the next edition of Patriots Playbook. Enjoy the draft. Let's go, Pats.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check Patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.